prosecution of felon gangster mafiotic negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable, the blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, with no private law experience, detested by all factions, in spite of this, solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me, this negroidic, low, mafiotic, deadly Black Frank Gelada was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position of second highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long, worse-than-a-farce Nazi court criminal trial in Nassau County Court, 1958, where dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon slut wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her anus, her conch. She repeatedly gesticulated and whispered, "I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him." Her husband's dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan, flushed-faced in repeated open sodomistic displays, stuck out his tongue, wiggling it, chuckling to her. "You hangman rope gangster felon parroting puppet scum on top playboys can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious lowly sodomistic display by the felon sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau County Court. After my worse-than-Nazi court criminal conviction, crucifixion, for years in poverty I suffered hopeless, jobless, character assassination, and isolation in this low, deadly nigger town. I was the repeat target victim of this gangster government's gangsterization and undetectable extermination attempts to shut me up forever with my secrets. Then, in December 14th to 17th, 1965, I attempted to escape this worst mongrel gangster communist country to return to the Slovenic Polish land of my forefathers. Instead, in a gangster-staged parroting puppet deadly conspiracy, I was flown from Kennedy, New York Airport at night to a small, distant St. Lawrence River estuary, snowbound small airport under the guise that I was in Warsaw, Poland. Immediately, many, many things proved this to me, including the two big white asbestos-shingled hangars with the large Braniff Airways signs on their sidewalls, in addition to the many blurted statements I solicited from the many CIA deadly gangsters, the assassins of me, the many, many parroting puppets all around me. I demanded an immediate flight back to Kennedy, New York Airport. Instead, I was held captive all night, later in chains. I refused both all food and requests I go to sleep. Then CIA police gangsters pretending to be Polish police with no identification beat me bloodily. Later, while my return trip 707 Boeing jet airliner was being serviced for my return trip, I quickly walked into the airplane and saw a CIA gangster with a small electric hairdryer type blower pumping deadly poison nerve gas smoke into secret compartments under the ashtrays in the arms of the chairs, where later I was ordered to sit in the airplane full of CIA underlings, passengers, my assassins, who giggled as they watched me dragged in chains by the airplane by the gangster CIA police gangsters. These deadly gangster CIA passengers, they pressed the frontal panel of the ashtrays in the seat arms to release the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Indubitably, all of the others deadly CIA underling gangsters aboard this staged return flight, they all had taken the top secret poison nerve gas antidote pill, immuning them from the deadly poison nerve gas smoke. Deadly poison nerve gas smoke was sprayed at me from cigars, cigarettes, and even from ballpoint pens, also from the wig of a woman sitting next to me. Even the Swiss cheese type ice cubes were evaporating into poison nerve gas smoke in all of the free drinks. I got up and went to the rear of the airplane by the rear exit door with a large push-up handle. My Frankenstein brain thoughts broadcasting radio disclosed my intentions. Immediately, the loudspeakers screamed that the flight was over and that our airplane was already preparing to land at Kennedy, New York Airport. You hangman rope sneak gangster playboy scum on top know these facts are true, not only from taking part in such undetectable exterminations, but also you chicanerous, demented, felon, parroting puppet gangsters can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of all these horrible, terrifying, deadly events. When I returned home, Joseph I. Deck, my only brother and deadly felon, murderer, and assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, he beat me repeatedly, cursing me that I was not exterminated by all of the poison nerve gas smoke, and that I did the impossible in that I kept awake for 3 days and refused all food in order to prevent my sneak extermination. In accordance with the completely gangster computer god concocted and manipulated statutory laws, one of your gangster court's requisite duties is to automatically rehear my said appeal case because it has been brought to your attention, you hangman rope gangsters, that my entire life was destroyed by you co-conspirators through the gangster government perjured and fabricated criminal conviction of me in order to fulfill the demands of your communist god, the worldwide mad deadly gangster computer god. You deadly parroting puppet felon gangsters already know that I have been and am an innocent primary victim and target for destruction and extermination because I am a menace to your gangster computer god, and that I am worse than defenseless without the gangster protection and control of the gangster Frankenstein earphone radio. I stand alone against you demented, deadly gangster parroting puppets, namely this worst gangster communist computer god-controlled gangster government. Before I am exterminated by you hangman rope underlings, I demand a reply. October 21st, 1976, Francis E. Deck, Esquire. Addendum. I personally filed my maximum conviction appeal brief in 1961 with the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. The chief clerk, he knew me. He sneeringly grabbed my thick, strong, homemade appeal brief, and then he attempted to rip it up in desperation. The chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court ripped off the cover of my appeal brief. Miraculously, I stopped him without a deadly scene to me. Then, finding my ripped appeal brief, the felon, another co-conspirator with the 9 hangman rope gangster judges, the chief clerk, in cowardly fear, in staccato speech and gesticulation, he confessed to me, Mr. Deck, everyone is in on this one against you, even the Attorney General, namely Bobby Kennedy, younger than his very young brother Jack Kennedy, Kennedy then president, the Kennedy Playboys. Little fag Bobby was a felon, lowest, chicanerous, untouchable, parroting puppet gangster against worse than defenseless Mr. Francis E. Deck, Esquire. My quick questioning and the co-conspiring felon chief clerk explained and gave me a new and special notice form for only Mr. Francis E. Deck, Esquire, which had to be mailed to the opposition, the deadly gangster district attorney, in order to prevent the dismissal of my appeal case. Leaving quickly, I noticed in the room and hall several approaching uniformed and plainclothes beweaponed police. Later, Joseph I. Deck, my only brother, deadly villain, murderer, and secret assassin spy agent against me for this gangster government, cursed me, stating that I tricked the chief clerk of the U.S. Supreme Court and that I got out of that death trap fast. So brainwashed from birth by the computer god threshold brainwash radio, parroting puppet gangster slave, if you believe in anything, forget kneeling to abide by the high holy law long enough to say one word of pray for me, for your only hope for a future. Footnote, remember, it is gangster U.S. Supreme Court written high holy law. I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him. To all judges, First and Second Appellate Division, Superior Court, New York City, Court of Appeals, Albany, New York, U.S. Supreme Court, Washington, D.C. I write demanding a rehearing of my worse than lowest deadly gangster police state criminal conviction, which appeal case was in your farce, deadly gangster ghetto communist, gangster computer god manipulated gangster court. Below I state some of the many reasons for said rehearing, plus all of my evidence the Attorney General chicanerously forwarded to the Bar Association Grievance Committee for prosecution of felon gangster mafiotic negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable, the blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, with no private law experience, detested by all factions, in spite of this solely because of his many-year secret gangsterization and crucifixion of me. This negroidic, low, mafiotic, deadly Black Frank Gelada was then immediately and unprecedentedly and repeatedly, rapidly promoted in spite of tremendous opposition to the present position of second highest state judgeship solely through gangster computer god manipulation. As additional evidence, during the last week of my within-mentioned month-long, worse than a farce Nazi court criminal trial in Nassau County Court, 1958, where dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan's ball of fat felon slut wife, she, as planned, sat in the front row, repeatedly stripping her overclothes and completely pulling up her dress and slip, and pulling aside her old-fashioned pink bloomers in order to display her anus, her conch. She repeatedly gesticulated and whispered, I'll give it to you to suck. Finish him. Her husband, dwarfed-it felon gangster parroting puppet rectum lapper sodomist Judge William Sullivan, flushed-faced in repeated open sodomistic displays, stuck out his tongue, wiggling it, chuckling to her. You hangman rope gangster.
Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Happy Trump Acquittal Day. I don't want to talk about the impeachment at all. Like really at all. It went down exactly as pretty much everyone was saying. It shouldn't be any surprise to anybody. It was all theater, and the curtain has closed. And now Trump, of course, is free to fundraise on the pipe dream of MAGA for another 4 years. And, yeah. So we'll see how much money they're able to grift out of that for the next foreseeable future. But, yeah, let's not talk about that at all. Let's not talk about that at all. Drinking my coffee, my very cheap coffee, fresh out of the cheap coffee machine. I asked on Telegram if there was anything you guys wanted to talk about tonight instead of just talking about orange privilege, which is what I guess Trump is benefiting from, his orange privilege. And a couple interesting ideas as I scroll through here. There's a lot of comments. There's like, not all of them are comments really, so much as they're just spam and such. But there's a lot of comments, a lot of stuff. So maybe we'll sift through some of these and come up with some good ones here. I'm scrolling through them now. I scrolled through a few of them now, but there's like 400 plus now. You guys are going crazy with this. But in the meantime, I guess in the news, a couple news items since last time we spoke. Cosmopolitan magazine was pushing a cannibal fetish and saying that you shouldn't demonize cannibal fetishes just because of a few bad apples in the cannibal world. How far we have fallen. And out of curiosity, because I know Cosmo's been around like a really, really long time. And so I decided to take a look, 100 years ago, because it's over 100. I don't remember what year it started now, but it's maybe like 150 years old. I don't know. It's pretty old. And I decided to take a look and say, well, what were they pushing in 1921 as opposed to 2021? And the first thing I was struck by, because I was expecting kind of like, it's a girls' magazine, and, just based on what I know about Cosmo now, right? It's going to just be like, I was expecting like quizzes and how to please your man and stuff like that. And there was maybe like a little bit of that, but shockingly, it was full of like short stories. Like it was long form fiction, and not quite like romance novel garbage, but kind of, a little bit like that. The kind of stuff that you'd think women would want to read, I guess in 1921. But I was very surprised by that. And the writing was actually, by today's standards, quite good. I mean, it was trash, right? It was trashy for 1921. And ultimately it was trashy girl fiction, but compared to promoting cannibalism, like it was like Shakespeare. So it was very interesting to do that. You can usually find anything that's been around that long. You can usually find a very specific dates and years. All you have to do is search for, like what I did was I just searched for Cosmopolitan January, or I think January is the month I looked at, but that's just the year 1921 and .pdf, and you'll come up with all kinds of archives and stuff like that, and it's always really, well, I guess blackpilling, seeing how far we have fallen. It's kind of like what I was talking about, like zooming out the graph. And when you zoom out the graph 100 years and you look at what was considered trashy girl magazine stuff in 1921, and you realize that comparatively it's like award-winning literature compared to what they write now. And the kinds of the advice they're giving to women, it's not how to, be a cannibal. It's how to be a good mother or find a good man and be a good wife. And again, this is Cosmo. This wasn't like even for back then, for 1921, it was for the cosmopolitan woman. It wasn't for the housewife necessarily, but even the cosmopolitan woman in 1921 wanted to have a nice home with a nice husband with nice children. And that is completely outside of the view of the modern woman, which I guess is relevant on Valentine's Day to some extent. But we're not going to focus too much on that either. I don't want it to be a let's bash on the modern Western woman on Valentine's. We don't need to do that. Some other news. People had asked me in the last stream what I thought about Patrick Casey's breakup with Nick Fuentes, and I told them then, and I'm still gonna I have more information now, but I said then that it just sounded like e-drama. After getting the more information, realizing what it was about, it is more e-drama, but specifically what I did find fascinating, and maybe I have some of the details wrong because it's e-drama, I didn't really spend a whole lot of time on it. I just watched like a clip of Patrick Casey saying that one of the reasons why he was distancing himself from the America First stuff was that Nick apparently is under federal investigation. His bank account is frozen. I would assume that has something to do with the large Bitcoin donation that he got from overseas. And who knows, maybe some other stuff we don't know about. But his complaint was because of the ongoing investigation, and as we know also, Catboy Cammy is supposedly also under federal investigation, according to a post that he made on Telegram. And I've yet to see any updates on that. Although I suspect that could be related to his visa, because he's not American and he is in America. But Patrick Casey was saying, well, we can't have our event. And I don't really pay attention too much in this space. So I don't know. I know that something about AFPAC, or there was going to be like a CPAC kind of a clone, right? And he wanted them to cancel it or postpone it or something like that, because he thought that the attendees, if they showed up, they would be investigated by the feds, and that it would ruin people's lives, and because of this paranoia about federal investigations. And so I did make some comments on Telegram and maybe Twitter. I don't know. I think mostly just Telegram, related to this paranoia that I see on the right, this fear of federal investigation. Now, I could be wrong, but I don't think AFPAC was going to be planning anything illegal. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't think that AFPAC had any intentions of promoting any kind of illegal activity or anything remotely close to that. If anything, in my experience, that crowd seems to be extra touchy about even talking about anything that could be considered Fed posting or, that sort of thing. And I know that they were playing clips of Nick during the impeachment trial, but to be perfectly fair, if you watch the full clips in context, while Nick, those trimmed clips, he certainly sounds very spicy. If you watch it in context, it's not nearly as spicy as the Democrats playing those clips would like you to believe. And so, and again, I sincerely doubt that even if that's the reason for the FBI's interest in Nick, because members of Congress have sent these clips to the FBI and said, harass this guy, investigate this guy. He was calling for the murder of members and this sort of thing. He really wasn't. Like, he just wasn't. If you look at the whole thing in context, he really wasn't. It's just the fact that he did. It's kind of like the, I don't know. I was going to say it was kind of like the cookie joke, but it's not even really like that. It's more like, he was just saying, like, aside from, like, what can you do with these congressional members? You can't do anything with your vote. And then he said offhandedly, I guess you could kill them, but you can't them. And then the full context, not on the clip here with me, but he clarified, obviously, because Nick's not the kind of guy that's going to be Fed posting, quite the opposite, actually. So what I've been saying is, you just have to assume you're already on a list. You're already on a list. They have had access, especially for these Zoomers, like your whole life. The Patriot Act has been around for, if you were born any amount of time after 9/11, the Patriot Act's been around since 2001, 2002. So for the last 20 or so years, they've been able to justify spying on everybody electronically. And that before it was legal, they had this stuff ready to go. It's not like they drafted up the Patriot Act. Everyone knows that 9/11 didn't just catch them by surprise. Oh no, oh my God. All these think tanks that were drafting the Patriot Act. Oh, by the way, guess who you have to thank for a lot of the Patriot Act? Justice Kavanaugh. That's right. Based Catholic Kavanaugh. The beer drinking bro. The keg party Kavanaugh. Womanizer Kavanaugh. No, he was Bush's lawyer on 9/11. A lot of people, I don't know why. It's funny because I say this as often as I can, and I feel like people are always shocked every time I say it. But he was Bush's lawyer on 9/11. Based Kavanaugh was Bush's lawyer on 9/11 and helped craft and push through the Patriot Act. Biden also wrote or co-wrote or co-sponsored, I'm sure these guys never write their own stuff. But he was promoting a version of the Patriot Act even prior to 9/11. I think after the shenanigans with the Oklahoma City bombing stuff. So this surveillance state stuff's been going on a long time. And prior to the legal surveillance that was going on, you're crazy to think that they weren't illegally swallowing up all this data. There was a program called, if I remember correctly, called Carnivore, which it's just great name, huh? That doesn't sound ominous at all. Carnivore. And that was prior to the Patriot Act. And Carnivore was designed to just swallow up all the email traffic it possibly could. And you got to remember, especially when the internet was first born, or rather when it was first publicly available to most people, encryption was like, that didn't exist. Everything was just passed in plain text, passwords, everything. So it was not hard. It was not hard for the government to just vacuum all that shit up. And you're crazy if you think that they weren't doing that. And so they were just swallowing up emails, passwords, banking, all this stuff. And then the Patriot Act just made some of it legal. But as I mentioned last stream, I think it was last stream, the way they get around the legal aspect of it, the way that and they've admitted to doing this, isn't like conspiracy theory. This is the official stance of the NSA. And that is, it's perfectly okay for us to swallow up all the traffic that we can get our hands on. It doesn't become a privacy issue until we actually look at it. Okay, so we can store all of your data all the time. And then if down the road, and there's no time limit to that, right? This data is forever. You know, they say the internet's forever. You better believe the data centers at the NSA are forever. And so they're just swallowing up everything you're doing on the internet, right? And then let's say after 10, 20, 30, who knows how many years, they want to come at you. Well, now they can retroactively look back at all of your digital traffic for the last, forever, really. For some of these people, it's your whole lives, And which is crazy if you think about it. See, this is why it's so important. The right needs to get a grip on understanding technology and understanding privacy, understanding big data, understanding the dangers, and not just be so focused on like, oh, Twitter's trying to censor me. Yeah, that's a big deal too. But we got a lot of problems in the digital space, and a lot of it's because the average person doesn't understand the number of horrific things that the government can do with the data, and not even just in terms of convicting you, right? Not like, think of it this way. It's like, I know I have broken, I don't even want to say or guess, but like, I guarantee you, if somehow the NSA had been following me around, or anyone had been following me around my entire life with a camera, and they wanted to find things that I did that were illegal, and they really wanted to throw the book at me, they could go through, years and years and years of footage and find things that I did wrong. And that's not really a practical thing, right? At least not yet. I guarantee you with this Internet of Things and 5G and all this other stuff, that's a part of it. Like honestly, that's the biggest danger of 5G. There might be some health things related to the size of the wave and the power that the transmitters need and that sort of a thing. But really, what you should be focused on is the reason they want to deploy it so bad. And and yes, they want to not test it in terms of looking for adverse health risks and that sort of thing. But they want to have the ability to capture more data from more people simultaneously. Because right now, the digital trail that you leave behind, it's not like they're recording from your microphone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to some server where they can or definitely not like your camera, right? But eventually that's what they'd like to have. That's what they'd like to have. It's kind of like, people are worried about pre-crime, and that kind of gets rolled up into it. But look at the past crime stuff. If their logic is they can look at the data that they've stored on you for crimes once they actually get a warrant, and they've got 30 years, they'll find something. All of us have committed crimes, whether it's just as simple as speeding or something like that. They'll find something. But more than that, Bill Barr, right? Another based Trump pick, Bill Barr, he wanted to use this data to do pre-crime. In the same way that companies like Facebook want to look at all your data and predict what you're going to do in terms of just how you're going to interact with advertisers and that sort of a thing. The government wants to look at data and create predictive models for looking for patterns that predict when someone's going to become like a criminal. And so you really do get into like this Minority Report type stuff, right? And good, one example could be Like if I worked at I've told you guys this. I've worked for a contractor that would often get contracts from these agencies to develop software solutions. Okay. And if while I worked there, they were to task us with this, and they did, I can't talk about like obviously the stuff that we worked on, but they did similar things. And I could 100% imagine a situation where they would, it's kind of like the unmasking of data, right? Like they're allowed to look at data, but they can't see, well, who's saying this, right? So that's another way they can justify using the data. So what they could say is, okay, we're going to get all this data and we're going to run it through this computer model. We're going to run it through this AI. And we will only unmask like a mass shooter. Like let's say you have a mass shooter go, like the guy that went into that Walmart or whatever, right? And maybe it's a false, who knows, right? It doesn't matter. And they can then unmask his data and say, okay, well, this guy, we now have a model. We now have a model of what a mass shooter, even though like the examples of this are going to be really small. In fact, that's what's kind of bad for everybody is they're not going to have a huge sample size. There's not a lot of people doing mass shootings, right? But they'll get this real limited sample size and they'll say, well, based on the behavior of this guy prior to committing the mass shooting, we have a blueprint of what a mass shooter's behavior online looks like. And now they can use that blueprint to apply it to all the data they have on everybody else and start using that as an excuse to unmask those people and start investigating those people. So let's just say, for whatever reason, mass shooters are like really into, I will just say they're really into anime, right? They're really into anime. And they like anime and they like Krispy Kreme donuts and they use proton mail or something like that, right? And so it could be, I'm being a little ridiculous, but like that's, honestly, it could really come down to something as stupid as this. And so now what the agency in question can say to a judge is, well, look, we have determined that mass shooters, they're really into anime. They like Krispy Kreme donuts and they use proton mail. And we've got like these 20,000 accounts or, I guess accounts or not accounts, I guess users, internet users that match very closely the online behavior of this mass shooter guy. And so we just need you to sign on the dotted line here and we can start investigating those people. And then, like I said before, if they didn't do any, like, let's say you're one of those people. Like, let's just say you happen to like anime, you like Krispy Kreme donuts, and you use proton mail. They can now look at that. And even if you're, obviously, most of you, I would assume, or hopefully all of you, are not going to do like a mass shooting. But they could say, okay, this guy, maybe he's not doing a mass shooting, but now that we're looking at his whole history and we're able to unmask it, as it were, we can charge him with these other things. I mean, this is just one tiny example. This is the kind of thing, though, that people on the right need to be thinking about. And this is also why people on the right need to just make the assumption that anything you say online, anything, is something that could potentially be used against you in court at some point. I mean, that's the way it is. And it sucks, but that's the way it is. There is no expectation of privacy anymore. A couple of things that came up related to this that I posted on Telegram were the fact that border agents can now search your phone. So if you're coming across the border from a business trip, a vacation, I mean, it doesn't matter. If you're entering the country, they can look at the photos on your phone. they've got these, I mean, there's cops that just have this. This isn't like federal government stuff. Local cops have these things where they just plug your phone into this device that just makes a mirror image of the SSD of your phone. So they basically just have an exact copy of your phone. And there you go. It could be anything. And you could say, well, I don't have anything on my phone. All right. Well, do you have anything embarrassing on your phone? You know, maybe you were cheating on your girlfriend. Maybe you've got some suspect photos. Maybe you've got photos of you and your friends. Maybe you've got nudes. Maybe you've got photos of you doing drugs. I mean, it could be instant blackmail material, if nothing else. Which, by the way, I often wonder when we talk about how much influence Silicon Valley seems to have on Congress. They seem to be totally untouchable. They get dragged into these hearings, not often enough, and not very often to talk about this subject. But they get dragged into these hearings, and as I've said before, Ted Cruz, he does his little, soundbite barrage. He carefully crafts little rants that can be trimmed down to 2 minutes and 20 seconds, perfect for Twitter. But nothing happens. Nothing ever happens. Nothing gets regulated, and they're just allowed to continue. And I think that you'd be crazy to not ask yourself, how much of this could be tied to the very real, not just possibility, certainty that companies like Google have amassed mountains of data on all of these people. All of them. Not just the congressman, not just the president, but maybe even members of the intelligence community themselves. They've got your search history. They know what porn you look at. They have your emails. I mean, that's why it's a joke. Like, oh, we can't find Hillary's 30,000 emails. Nah, I guarantee you there's lots of people that have those. And these people wouldn't even have to threaten members of Congress, or even, I don't even think the intelligence community, because this is just something that any smart person would just be aware of. You just know they have this information. And it doesn't matter if it's in a direct message, a private message. Instagram is going to be banning people now for hate speech and direct messages. Nothing's private. Twitter has admitted to reading direct messages. So if you are someone that was a normal private citizen, in fact, it's almost worse if you just start, like, the very few members of Congress who come from the private sector, I think Paul Gosar, for example, one of the very few based people out there, was just like a doctor, So you have like a handful of these guys, but they've been using Gmail for 10 years or whatever. And so these tech companies, they know if you had a Ashley Madison. Remember the Ashley Madison hack happened a few years ago, and there was all kinds of people in Washington that had accounts. Funny how quickly that story disappeared. For those of you who don't know, Ashley Madison is I don't know if it's still around, because after that hack, I don't know if they stuck around, but it was a dating website built specifically for married people to cheat. And someone hacked it and released all the account information, and there was a lot of people in Washington that had accounts, which should surprise nobody. The other story that came out was that the FBI has the ability to look at messages on Signal, the Signal app. At the very least on iPhones. But I guarantee you it's not limited to just iPhones. And so even when you go out of your way to try to encrypt your messages, they often still have the ability to look at the messages. Whether it's because they've got a backdoor, they have the encryption key, maybe even just given to them by these Silicon Valley companies. Or because, like I've mentioned before, that they don't even have to do that. If they have a keylogger on your phone or something like that, they can just capture your passwords and it doesn't really matter at that point. In fact, I was talking to a buddy of mine who works in security, and that's about as specific as I'll get about that guy, but he was telling me, because I remember one time I was talking to him, I was like saying, should I be getting like Knoppix Linux and just, using Tor all the time and just be super paranoid about everything I do? And he said, no, because that, if anything, is like a red flag. Because they look for that. They're like, okay, well, this guy's definitely because it's difficult to just swallow up the information of 350 million or whatever the fucking population. It's probably not even just America they're doing this, right? So it's difficult to swallow up 1 billion people's internet traffic and separate the garbage from the stuff that they want to look at. Now, AI is going to make that a lot easier. A lot easier. It probably already is, right? But if you start using heavy encryption that's way outside the norm of what the average person is using, he said, yeah, that automatically means they're going to be looking at you. And not only that, you're going to slip up, right? One of these days, you're going to forget. Like, so even if you somehow manage to find some rock solid encryption and the person you're talking to or communicating with also has like this rock solid encryption, and either one of you have been hacked, at a certain point you're going to fuck up. You're going to forget to do something. You're going to forget to turn on your VPN or whatever, right? And they'll be waiting because you've already basically sent up the flare that, hey, I'm doing something. I'm doing something worth hiding. So it's easier, in my opinion, you guys do what you want, to just assume that everything you say electronically, it's plausible, legally or not, doesn't matter, that it'll be used against you. So we now know, Signal, for example, is one of these things. Now, Telegram has end-to-end encryption on chats, but first of all, it's not the default. You have to activate that. You have to start a new secret chat. But again, that's not rock solid. It adds another layer. It'll hide it from, non-governments, I guess. A lot of this encryption stuff, really, it's going to keep you protected from like your average everyday hacker type, right? Like the encryption between you and your bank. That's going to protect you from people trying to get your credit card number and stuff like that. It's not going to protect you from a government. It's not going to protect you from a government that has the ability to strong arm, or in some cases, strong arm these companies, but in some cases they've actually funded the creation of some of these companies. The CIA they'll set up like these fake angel investing firms, right? And they'll seed the money to these companies so they can have the tech, and so they can have the access to the tech. In fact, anytime, you ever notice how every once in a while, just out of nowhere, there's like this new platform that everyone's talking, like all at the same time. You know, and I would put Parler in this category too. Remember, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you had members of Congress talking about Parler. You had all the approved pundits on TV like Sean Hannity and whatnot talking about Parler. You had Rush Limbaugh on the radio talk, like all the mainstream conservatives just one day, all in unison, started telling you to go join Parler. And now there's another app that's come out that I hear a lot of people talking about. I think it's called Clubhouse. Is that the one? Clubhouse? And they're like, oh yeah, just join this thing. You can talk to these powerful people and look, it doesn't look particularly nefarious, but again, it's just, you can just tell that there's a push for people to use this app. And the same thing could be said about Twitter. I mean, Twitter was bleeding money for over a decade. And VC money kept coming in, kept pouring in. Why? Because they wanted the data. They wanted the data. You know, I think I saw a story, even actually just, it might have been the day, that Twitter was posting a substantial loss, like something like close to like $1 billion, might have been more than that for the last year. It's not going away, but it's also a testament to how difficult it is to compete with something like that, right? For an honest person to compete with that. You know, people complain about BitChute buffering and stuff like that. Well, I mean, BitChute can't bleed money for 10 years straight in the same way that YouTube could. You know, YouTube, well, you got to remember, YouTube, before it got bought out by Google, had a lot of bandwidth limitations to it. I think you could only upload videos that were like less, it was pretty small. It was like less than 200 megabytes or something crazy like that, like when it first came out. But now, you know, they've got Google behind them. They've got the aptly named Alphabet behind them. So that's all I would say to people out there. That's half of what I want to say. Half of what I want to say is assume that anything you say electronically is going to be potentially used against you at some point. And it doesn't matter if you're behind a VPN. It doesn't matter, you know, it doesn't matter if you're using some fake account or some burner phone or whatever. They can tie it to you pretty easily. If they couldn't, they wouldn't. It would be illegal. So that's half, but that leads to the other half. The other half of that is, okay, so does that just mean that I should be afraid all the time? No, it just means don't be retarded. And it also kind of means, it kind of, in a way, tells me that this highlights the importance of real life meeting, real life communities. You know, I was talking a while back about how one of the reasons why the surveillance state is so important for the government to secure is for self-preservation. The number one priority of every hierarchy and every system, before everything else, is self-preservation. That's just the way it is. You know, if you create any organization, if you create a charity that's supposed to help men with prostate cancer, their first priority isn't to cure prostate cancer. It's to perpetuate that organization. You know, the checks are going to be cut to their employees before they're going to be sent to research. That's just the way it is. And that goes for any agency within the government. And that even goes for in the private sector. You know, if you've got a huge multinational company, and within this company, they've got all these different departments, the first priority of all of these departments is not what those departments are tasked with doing. It's to stick around. It's to keep everyone employed. And then they can worry about what it is they're supposed to be doing. So that's just the way that it is, right? And so the reason they want this surveillance state is it is an invaluable tool in perpetuating the status quo. Because the example I used was, let's say in 1850 or whenever, you know, prior to telephones, prior to electronic communications, if you had problems, if your community had problems with a politician, and I don't mean like you're going to tar and feather him, right? Like just you're going to do some kind of political move like to get him ousted. You can secretly meet with other people that have a problem very easily. No encryption required. All you have to do is say, hey, Farmer Bill, meet us behind the barn at the Johnson farm at midnight. We're going to talk about Sheriff Tom or, you know, whatever. And you know, only tell people that are on our side. And maybe someone leaks it out or whatever, but like, you know, that's your only risk. And you can all meet behind the barn at midnight, talk about your big plan to do whatever. And there's nothing that Sheriff Tom can do about it. And there's no record of what you said, because this is before recording devices even, right? So even if Sheriff Tom hears about it, like someone says like, oh, they were meeting behind, you know, the barn talking about how they're gonna vote you out of office, Sheriff Tom. Is that true? Well, no, I don't know what he's talking about. There's no recording, you know. This chaos, this beneficial chaos, or I don't know what you even want. I don't. Maybe it's just the chaos of the analog world. It worked in favor of the people, of the community, the members of the community. And ever since the invention of recording devices, first of all, I mean, look at just speaking of recording devices, you know, you don't have to look at the internet necessarily. Just look at the role that recording devices played in taking down mobsters. Now, you could say that's a good thing. You know, this technology can be used for good in the same way that, in fact, that's how they sell it, right? That's how they sold the Patriot Act. Oh, we're going to use this. We're not using this for you. We're using this to take down terrorists. And so people are like, all right, well, if you're going to take down terrorists, you know, I guess that sounds good. And with the recording devices and getting, you know, wiretaps and tapping people's phones, same thing. Oh, we're not using this for, you know, we're not listening. We don't care if you're you know, telling dirty jokes or cheating on your wife or whatever. We just care about taking down the mob. And even if that's how this technology is first used, because the number one priority of every hierarchy is self-preservation, it never stops at that. it always gets used to perpetuate that power structure. And now with the Biden administration in power, they are looking to expand, which is, it's already a travesty, right? The lack of privacy that you have now is already unconstitutional as far as I'm concerned. It's already, I mean, they were spying on the Trump campaign. So no one is safe. Literally nobody. I mean, and they were spying on Trump after he was elected president. So if a president-elect isn't safe, you're not safe. And so again, you just have to realize, okay, I can't say anything electronically that I wouldn't want brought up in a court of law against me. And that's just the way it is. And like the mafia, right? The mafia, when they started to realize, oh, they're recording us. In fact, they went so far as to using super zoom lenses from buildings blocks away. And when they couldn't put in recording devices, they were hiring lip readers to look at the conversations that were taking place in a restaurant, if they had like a view of them through a window or something like that, right? So this whole surveillance stuff, then it's nothing new. Just the only thing that's new is the technology has made it a lot easier for them. But I'm sure you guys have seen the gangster movies where like they cover their mouths when they talk because they know that the lip readers are out there. So unfortunately, when you're in a tyrannical society where everyone's treated like criminals, in order to balance out the power again, or at least, make it slightly less imbalanced, the unfortunate situation that you're in is you have to start thinking like a criminal. You have to start thinking like a criminal. It doesn't matter if you're doing anything wrong. You have to take active measures to protect yourself against surveillance. And like I said, I think that here's something you got to realize. All right, people are worried about meeting in person because they're like, oh, feds will always infiltrate it. And look, you're not wrong about that, but the manpower, the investment it takes to spy in person. I mean, just think of what that takes. Think of all the people in the country. And if you were to, let's just use PTA meetings as an example. Think of all the PTA meetings in America. And let's say the feds wanted to spy on PTA meetings, right? And they'd have to train all of these federal agents to be able to blend in with all these parents at these PTA meetings. And they'd have to, it wouldn't take a whole lot. They just have to make them look like parents and make up some story about their kid or whatever, right? Have some backstory. They show up. Relatively easy, but just it's a huge investment when you think of like all the different fucking PTA meetings across the country. Whereas if all these PTA meetings are taking place on Zoom calls, so there's another reason that they want all this stuff to start taking place online. You see what I mean? This all fits together. If all these PTA meetings are taking place in Zoom calls, well, voila. We don't need any agents. We don't even need very many analysts. We just need a somewhat capable AI that can comb through all of this captured data that's being transferred for these Zoom calls. And then it'll red flag a handful of this stuff and hand the red flagged accounts over to an analyst. And then if they decide at that point they need to infiltrate a few of these groups or whatever, instead of having to train millions of agents to go infiltrate all over the place, they just need a handful. So when you meet in person and do these sorts of things, like, for example, what like Nick was talking about doing with his AF pack thing. And again, I don't think he was planning on doing anything illegal, right? It makes it more difficult for them to conduct surveillance on you when you have to do it in person. And the other thing, it also, let's say, okay, well, they're still going to send in a Fed. All right, but at least now there's the chance you'll know. If you're doing everything online, you won't even know. You won't even know if you're being surveilled. But if you're in like someone's garage drinking beers and talking about the Second Amendment or whatever, because of, I don't know, whatever group that you've decided to make, and some guy that no one really knows too well is acting kind of weird, you at least kind of maybe know. Like, you don't know for sure. What's up with that Jack guy? He seems a little iffy. And it makes it more difficult for us, too. I mean, one of the reasons why it's so easy to get us to use these technologies is that it's easy for us, too. It's convenient. I mean, like what we're doing right here. I'm able to talk to all you guys all over the world in a way that I'd never be able to do this. Like if I were to say, hey, everyone go to the bunker next week. I mean, what, 10, 20 of you guys could show up maybe? It's like, so I get it. But that's why we don't talk about anything here. I know a lot of people think that I get edgy sometimes. I really don't. Every time I talk about violence in terms of power, I'm never telling anyone to go do violence. I'm just being philosophically honest about the nature of power. And if they're going to investigate me and try to throw the book at me or whatever over something like that, then look, we don't stand a chance anyway. Because at that point, if you get locked away forever just by being honest about the nature of power, you don't stand a chance. You'll never be able to get the ball rolling. I hope that makes sense. I'm a little tired today. I've been up since. I haven't been up quite 24 hours. No, I'm just kidding. Well, it's been like maybe about 20 hours. I've been up for quite a bit today. Had a storm rip off, not part of my roof, thank God, but part of the chicken coop I'm not using. Part of that roof got ripped off, and the storm is still raging. In fact, I wasn't sure I was going to have internet because the wind is quite violent right now. All right, let me take a look here at chat. And I'm also this is gonna be a pretty cozy stream. I'm gonna go through some of your Telegram suggestions, perhaps. Nothing was really standing out when I just breezed through it, which is why I went on my rant about surveillance, I guess. Although actually a few of you guys did bring that up. What am I drinking? Cheap coffee. I don't know. It's like store brand. It's not, I mean, it's not like the crystals. It's actual coffee, but it's not that great. And I drink my coffee black. Let's see here. I think Cooter and Cletus are up to something. Yep. Oh, speaking of Cooter and Cletus, I was working on Simpsons today. That's one of the reasons why I haven't slept much today. I was trying to get part 1 of the Simpsons video done today. I'm not there yet. It's just so, like, it's going to have to, there's no way it's just going to be one part. In fact, I think part 1 is going to just be the God stuff. But the problem is, I'd rather end on that. But it's so much. Like, just the clips, to give you an idea, I shared a clip out once that was cut for Twitter, right? So it was 2 minutes and 20 seconds of just the Simpsons talking shit about God. But I have like an hour I have like an hour of this stuff, and I'm trying to trim it because I'm like, but it's this. I don't know. Like, there's value in seeing. I don't want to play like a full hour of it, but like, there is some value in seeing just like the quantity. You know, the one after another of just saying God is fake, God is fake, God is fake, God is fake. Christians are dumb. Christians are dumb. Christians are dumb. Christians are dumb. And then the last season that they did, and it's the last one I'm going to watch, at least. It was for last year. They went so far as to trying to reform Christianity as some like Unitarian view of it. Like, they have a whole episode where some New Agey preacher comes in, and he's so woke that even Lisa starts going to church and enjoying it. And and there's even like another, like, they went hard at Christianity this last season. There's another one that same season where God is saying that even atheists will go to heaven if they're nice, and it's just weird that they're going so hard at Christianity, especially given the recent news where they're obviously tying Christianity to extremism, where they're trying to say that if you are, it's almost like a perversion of what was happening after 9/11, where you had the mosques were under surveillance, and you had the left kind of going nuts, saying like, oh, you're persecuting these poor, harmless Muslims. And look, I happen to think that Muslims didn't really have as much to do with 9/11 as the official story might say. But I also have zero problem with a Christian nation like the United States. Well, first of all, they shouldn't even have mosques in America. But if you're going to have them, and you're going to have Muslim violence, which we definitely have had, I have no problem with keeping an eye on those people. But now it's being that same exact stuff, that cannon's being turned around and pointed at us now. So, anywho, let me take a look here. Look up WNP 136 court case and gag order that was discovered from. It looks like government workers are forbidden from talking on some subjects, even as in personal opinion can be very useful to know. WNP 136? I'll look it up. But yeah, I'm very aware of stuff like that. WNP 136. Let's just see what comes up. Maybe something cool will come up. Oh, this has to do with the Israel nuclear stuff, huh? Well, yeah, there's... okay, so this is a gag order specifically about Israel's nuclear program. Yeah, no, there's definitely stuff like that. I mean, there's been gag orders where people can't even talk about their own cases, where the federal government will investigate you, and you're not even allowed to tell anyone that you're being investigated. In fact, in some cases, you can't even tell counsel that you're being investigated. And in even worse cases, you can be held essentially captive physically and not be able to tell anyone about it, like not get your phone call. The whole post 9/11 world is fucked. Like, if you want to know when we turn a major corner, not the corner, because we've been heading this direction a long time, but a major success for the tyrants was 9/11. Big time. On so many different fronts, but specifically the ability to just use the T word, terrorism. Which is why they're painting anyone with right-wing views as a domestic terrorist. Because once they say the T word, all bets are off. They can do whatever they want. Let's see here. Why is this not updating? I gotta keep going all the way down here. My chat's like going stupid slow. I'm probably going to have to restart Trovo here. Someone just said, how much time do you think we have? Well, I mean, how much time till what? I mean, it's already begun. I mean, I was telling people to leave the cities and try to be self-sufficient a couple years ago because I sensed that this was going to be a problem. I think that it's already going. Like, how do I see it unfolding? Yeah, it's hard to guess, because who would have guessed like COVID, right? So it's hard to predict precisely how it's going to unfold, but it's not hard to predict the direction, the overall trend. It's like the graph I keep talking about, where if you zoom in, you look and you have ups and downs, right? Like one day it might look like you're kind of winning. And then one day it's like, oh, we're really losing. And then the next day but if you just zoom the graph out all the way, you see, oh, ultimately it's going one direction. But it's real hard to predict those little moves, right? I mean, ask any day trader, right? You can sometimes, if there's a lot of volatility, you can sometimes guess short-term trends. And the day traders who are really good at it they can make some money off of those movements that are going to happen throughout the day, right? But it's really difficult to do. It's really hard to do. And it's much harder to do that than it is to just say, I know that this investment's going to make money over 5 years. It's the same thing with this, where if you just look at what's happening in the news cycle every day, there's days it seems like, oh, we're actually making progress. This isn't so bad. Oh, here's a white pill, whatever, right? But if you zoom out, you know where it's going. So I try not to focus so much on how much time do we have, because like I think the answer is zero. I think it's you should be every day that you're not preparing for, say, especially given like what's your involvement. For someone like me, I'm going to be affected before maybe just the average person out there that has right-wing views, because I'm in terms of the tyrants, I'm part of the problem in a higher priority way than just someone who just believes the things that I do, but they're not, but that's it, right? So they're going to come after me financially, and they're going to come after me, maybe legally at some point. I don't know. But that's why, for me, it was important. I knew, like, look, I'm not going to be able to. One of the reasons I went to the bunker, it was a financial choice, is I needed to have a place that I could be if they killed all of my income. I wouldn't be homeless. I'd have a place that I could be if they deplatform me from banks, a place that would be so cheap to at least survive at, that I would be able to find a way without too much trouble. And so I think that's the first step that people need to do, is look at your life. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck, and that's not your fault usually. Now, but there's also a lot of people. Here's something I did. This is why I'm not saying this because, like, oh, I'm better than you. In fact, I was very financially irresponsible when I was younger. And I noticed something about what I was doing was, when I would get a new job, I'm loading up chat again, sorry. It just came back up here. Like when I was making, well, just as an example, like when I was a production assistant, and you make nothing, right? I was making like maybe 30 grand a year or something like that. And I I was super excited when I went from being a production assistant to a director. And it doubled my pay. But I noticed after, say, 6 months or so, I seem to have like the same amount of money. And it's because what I did is I just increased all of my expenses. So for example, I would eat out more often. I would buy the more expensive beer. I would just buy the more expensive clothes. And so I was really kind of living the same standard of living in a lot of ways. It was just like more expensively. And at the end of the day, I still had the same amount in my bank account, even though I was making like twice as much money. And I noticed that, and then again, when I got another promotion and I was making like another substantial jump up in cash, same thing. I was still living in a shitty apartment. It's just that the shitty apartment I lived in now was an extra $1,000 a month. But functionally, it was still a shitty apartment. It wasn't something I owned. It just was in a fancier part of town. It was slightly fancier than my last apartment, but at the end of the day, it was still just a shitty apartment. And the clothing that I was buying, same thing. It's like, oh, now instead of wearing like a $20 pair of jeans, I'm wearing a $200 pair of jeans, like an idiot. And I think a lot of people do that, and that's an easy thing to stop doing. Instead of just increasing your expenditures every time you get a raise, keep living like you're poor. And start building your ball of money. You'll never get a ball of money like the finance guys. But if you can get at least a ball of money to where you can be self-sufficient eventually, that's actually much easier to do than you would think. You just have to stop eating out all the time. You have to just live like you're in debt when you're not in debt. And then a lot of these places, like that's the other thing too, is you just gotta, let's say you want to get out of the city and you want to homestead, and that's something that you can do because you have a job. Not everyone has a job like this, by the way. So that's another thing that you need to look at too. But if you have a job that you can do remotely, and now especially with COVID and everything like that, pretty much there's a lot of jobs where you're allowed to do it remotely. So it doesn't really matter where you live as long as you have internet access, that sort of a thing. But you can't, let's say you don't have enough money to have like the perfect Instagram worthy homestead, where you have all this land and an apple orchard and, a flock of sheep or herd of cat, whatever, right? Like you can't, like if that's what you want to, is your first place, you're going to have to save up a lot of money before you do something like those. Places are expensive. But you can go small, find some piece of shit somewhere. Like, that's what I did. I found like a literal piece of shit place. Like the place that was, you guys heard me talking about this. Even now it's not that great, but like when I first got here, it was a nightmare. There was killer bees living in the ceiling. Like that's what the kind of place that you can get. When you get that place, if you pay for it outright, you don't have rent. You don't have a mortgage. And if you don't worry about if you don't watch like these HGTV shows where they're buying these houses and installing these $20,000 fucking kitchens and all that stuff, you don't need that. You don't have that in your shitty apartment, right? My kitchen, very minimalistic right now. Okay. And that's being generous. Yeah. Not the nicest flooring in the pillbox. A lot of vinyl on the floor, and in some places it's just concrete. Because I don't need that. And so you can live somewhere kind of shitty, and because you're not paying rent, you're not paying for a mortgage, and as long as don't, again, Don't think to yourself, oh, well, because I'm saving like $2,000 a month or whatever you would be paying, right? I can just spend all of that on put it all into the property. You don't even necessarily have to do that. Just save it. Maybe it's just it's your first. Maybe it's a good property to start out at where you can save up some money and then get to a better property. But get out of usury as quickly as possible is what I'm getting at. And get out of and start looking at alternative banking solutions like crypto, which unfortunately I'm increasingly more suspicious of, just because you see all these big financial institutions starting to adopt Bitcoin now. And I know that's kind of what everyone was kind of thinking it would happen anyway. But it's happening now. You've got PayPal, you've got MasterCard, I think the other day said they're going to start putting Bitcoin on their network. So, it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to start using crypto, because I feel like it's just a matter of time, especially with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is totally traceable. Bitcoin is not a privacy coin. That's very easy to track every transaction. In fact, that was like one of the selling points initially, is that you could track all the transactions. And especially if you have a gateway going, if you're moving crypto from the crypto space to the dollar space, which you have to do right now if you're going to buy stuff with it, unless you are, you can find people that will accept crypto, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be at the same level that you can with dollars, right? So you always have that gateway going from crypto to dollars, unless you can do all your transactions just in Bitcoin or something like that. And once you do that, it's all traceable to you. It's all tied to you. And like in everything else on the internet, it's forever. So they can trace all of that stuff. And they can ban you. Like Coinbase banned a bunch of people already. Let's take a look here. Yeah, someone's talking about Monero. Monero is good because it is untraceable. There's a couple other privacy coins, but again, it's like it's real hard to, I don't know, maybe there's probably like shady sites you can buy stuff in Monero, but you can't pay your mortgage in Monero. You can't pay rent unless you're really, maybe you got like a really cool landlord, I guess. You can pay rent in Monero. Can't go to Walmart and buy food with Monero or whatever. But that's the kind of thing. Those are the kind of solutions I would suggest you start at least familiarizing yourself with, because those are it's already begun. Like people, when you ask like how long do we have? It's already started, right? They're already deplatforming people from financial institutions and from jobs. And this is another reason why I think organizing is a good idea too, just simply because of the same nepotism that some of our adversaries benefit from. It's such a foreign thing for Europeans, by and large, and especially Europeans that aren't ruling class. For ruling class people, it's just that's how they're brought up, is nepotism, right? They understand it. But you and I, we're brought up thinking that it's a meritocracy. It's all about, doing the best job, and the best man for the job will get it. And, and that's because that's what they teach slaves, because they want the slaves to try to be the best slave. They want you to try to be the alpha slave. So that, of course, that's the worldview they're going to try to imprint on you as quickly as possible. But that's not the world. That's not the way it works. And so that's another reason why it's important that we build these communities, because there might be people, like, how many jobs, think back just in your lifetime, how many jobs how many jobs did you get by just doing 1 billion interviews? And how many jobs did you get because a friend of yours knew of a job someplace? Now, that's going to depend on what industry you're in too. But it's much easier to get a job if you can just, if you got a friend, they can just be like, hey, hire this guy, he's cool. So that's another reason why we need communities, so we can have that kind of nepotism going on. And vice versa too, by the way. I mean, you think that, just let's use Hollywood as an example. Look at the cancel culture thing, right? Like they had that Star Wars chick. I don't even watch any new Star Wars things, so I just know what I saw on Twitter. But there was that Star Wars actress, and all she said was she compared the deplatforming of conservatives to, it's a total boomer take, but whatever, right? She like mentioned like it's like the Nazis or whatever. And so what did the Jews do? Because they're the only ones that are allowed to bring up the Nazis. So they flipped out and they deplatformed her, which is kind of funny. But that's the kind of thing that if we had strong communities that we could do. We could enforce canceling of our opponents. But we don't have any communities. We don't have any institutions. And that's how you build institutions. And I don't mean like, oh, we're going to infiltrate, the GOP or IBM or what anything, right? And take it over eventually. But you could definitely, on a small scale, look, the Church of Scientology took over the IRS in like a few years using nepotism. Look up, what was it called? Operation Snow White? Or maybe it was Operation Clambake. I always get those two mixed up. In fact, I'll look it up. A lot of people don't know about this. If you want a white pill, this is a white pill. I'm going to look this up for you guys right quick here. Operation Snow White, I think it might have been. Yeah, Scientologists, they wanted to be able to use the IRS to weaponize the IRS, against their enemies. Let's see here. Scientology. Okay, that was... Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's Operation Snow White. So this is from Wikipedia here. Operation Snow White was a criminal conspiracy by the Church of Scientology during the 1970s to purge unfavorable records about Scientology and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard. This project included a series of infiltrations into and thefts from 136 government agencies, foreign embassies, and consulates, as well as private organizations critical of Scientology, carried out by church members in more than 30 countries. It was one of the largest infiltrations of the United States government in history, with up to 5,000 covert agents. This operation also exposed the Scientology plot, Operation Freakout, because Operation Snow White was the case that initiated the U.S. government's investigation of the church. Under this program, Scientology operatives committed infiltration, wiretapping, and theft of documents in government offices, most notably those of the U.S. Internal Revenue Service. 11 highly placed church executives, including Mary Sue Hubbard, wife of founder L. Ron Hubbard and second in command of the organization, pleaded guilty and were convicted in federal court of obstructing justice, burglary of government offices, and theft of documents, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Long story short, this was Scientology. Not exactly the brightest bulbs, right? These guys are not geniuses. Now, a lot of this was prior to the surveillance state, and obviously it was found out because they took it to the next level, right? They were destroying records, and they were using the IRS to try to prosecute enemies of them, of the church and stuff like that. I'm not suggesting that, but what I'm suggesting is if the Church of Scientology was able to infiltrate embassies, the IRS, all these government agencies, and again, like I said, these guys are not the smartest guys in the world. These are Scientologists. And it became like the biggest infiltration in the United States government history. Is it really that unbelievable to think that if you wanted to use nepotism to staff up an organization with like-minded people that you could do it? Because that's what they did, right? They had people that would apply for jobs at all these agencies. And then once a couple of them got in, they would just start hiring their friends. And that's what a lot of, another example of this, I got a friend that works for, I'll just say a tech company. And, we've all heard the stories about these people that are forced to train their replacements, right? Well, that's not what happened with him, but with that same kind of atmosphere, he noticed that the second an Indian got into management, no matter what the department was at this tech company, within 6 months to a year, that department would be majority Indian. Because the person who would get the position to where they could do the hiring at the department, if they were Indian, they would just hire other Indians. And even if you're not doing this in any kind of organized way, that's the kind of thing that you should be doing anyway. Like if you're at a job, if you're in a company and you have the ability to hire and fire, you should take this kind of thing into consideration. Absolutely. Absolutely you should. Now, the unfortunate thing is there's increasingly more and more legal hurdles. But if you're able to, if that's not going to affect you, you should absolutely keep this in mind. Keep this this little story I'm telling you in mind when you're doing your hiring and firing. Okay, let's take a look here. White's Worthy Organization. Yeah, you know what? So here's something I was thinking about as I was painting something white yesterday. When they say white supremacy, this is white supremacy, that is white supremacy, and people have this automatic recoil. Like they're like, no, that's crazy. That's just the way. Look, you might not like the term that they're using, but they're not wrong. It is white supremacy. Because in a white country, you should want white supremacy. Now again, that it's a loaded term, right? So you might not like the term or the way that it's the taste that it puts in people's mouths. But so let me put it a different way. If your name is Bill Johnson, would you want your house to be Johnson supremacist? Would you want the decisions being made in the Johnson home made by Johnsons? I know there's dick jokes there. Apologize for picking that name. But you know what I mean? Like, if that's is it even really your house? If your family's not the one making the decisions? Why would you want the neighbors next door deciding what went on in your home? Why would you want them deciding anything? If you want to have a nation that's sovereign, you want the supremacy of the people who make up that nation. Otherwise, you're not even really a nation. Like I said, it's not really your household if you're not calling the shots in your own house. What is it? That's a slave's quarters. So you might not like the term white supremacy, but they're not wrong. All these things that they're talking about, like, oh, everything that they describe, it sounds ridiculous, right? Because white supremacy is such a loaded term. When they say, punctuality is white supremacy. It is. Punctuality is important to white people. And so when we structure a society, punctuality is a part of how that society works. And so it's white supremacy. It's like going back to the house, the Johnson household. When little Billy from next door comes over and visits, maybe he stays the night, he has to follow your rules. Doesn't matter what his parents let him do at his house. If in your home, bedtime is 10 o'clock, he goes to bed at 10 o'clock, or he can go the fuck home. If he doesn't like what you're serving for dinner, he can go the fuck home. He doesn't just decide, well, at my house, what I'm used to is we stay up till midnight and I can eat Oreos for dinner. All right, well then go the fuck home. This is our house, and these are the rules. Johnson supremacy. Yeah, all these little things that they see, that's more and more I'm realizing when the left accuses us of stuff, a lot of times they're right. They're just saying it in a very, it's not even like, it's not, like I said, it's not like a wrong way. They're rhetorically nasty way. But it's descriptive, and we should lean into it and be like, yeah, punctuality is white supremacy. This is a white country. You need to be punctual and not be ashamed of it. Don't let them bully you. Remember when I was telling you that bullying is a immune response that a culture has? That if children, in middle school, when they see a kid that's different, he's like a foreign object that has entered this little mini culture at the middle school. And they bully him because they want him to conform to that culture or to leave. Because otherwise, he's an infection. If they can't get him to conform or to leave, he's an infection. And so bullying is that immune response. And because we have lost that immune response, because they've eradicated bullying, whether you're bullying people for being 300 pounds overweight or having delusions about what gender they are, they've made it to where it's impossible to effectively bully in our society. Not only have they done that, so we get all these infections, and these infections spread because you're not allowed. The immune system's not allowed. The way I put it was, it's cultural AIDS. But not only that, they are using bullying tactics because increasingly we're the infection. Increasingly, the non-cancerous cells are the cancer. Increasingly, their immune response is trying to get you to either conform or to leave. And that's just going to increase the more that they have supremacy of the culture. They'll be the ones calling the shots. They'll be the ones bullying the infection. And you'll be the infection. All right, let's take a look here. I hate this chat thing. It doesn't update. There it goes. Racism is just a natural instinct to prefer those genetically closer to you. Non-racists are evolutionarily defective in the same way transgenders who castrate themselves are. Yeah, well, like I said, I think there's a little more complicated than that. But yeah, I mean, I think historically, Edward Dutton has some theories on this about Europeans and their lack of in-group preference. But the way I've tried to describe it to like boomers, like my boomer mom, for example, and this seemed to actually click. She fought it, but it kind of clicked a little bit, I could tell, is I said to her, if you have to make a choice, right, between making a decision that's going to benefit your kids at the cost of someone else's kids, or vice versa, and you're forced into that choice, you know, you can't avoid it. None of this, you know, ducking the question because you don't like it. What choice are you going to make, right? Obviously, you're going to make the choice that benefits your children at the cost of someone else's children, right? And or if you want me to simplify it and maybe hyperbolize it a little bit, if I have a gun and I say, I'm either going to shoot your kid in the head or this stranger's kid in the head, and you have to choose. You have to. Most people are going to choose you shoot the stranger's kid in the head, right? That's just normal. That's normal. You know, if you can only save one kid, your kid or a stranger, you're going to save your kid. If you want to change the language around so it's less like you're killing someone else. If there's two kids hanging from the window of a burning building and you can only save one of them, and one of them's your kid and one of them's someone else's kid, you're going to save your kid, right? Well, why is that? If we're all the same and it doesn't matter, if genetics don't matter, right? Like if the genetic closeness doesn't matter at all, why are you saving your kid? I mean, why is your kid more valuable to the society than this other kid? If you want to be consistent, it shouldn't matter, right? But it does matter. It does matter. And when you look at people who share your genetics, you know, the further away they are to you genetically, the less you're going to make decisions that favor them over other people, right? This is just natural instinct. And by the way, I'm not specifically talking about white people here. I'm talking about the people that show up. The Indian guy, right? The Indian guy that shows up, gets a job in management, and now he's in that exact situation. Who are you going to hire? The Indian guy or the white guy? He hires the Indian guy. Google, this was a story last week. Google was pressured into hiring some BLM chick. And I wish I had the article here because I can't remember the name. But they got pressured into hiring this BLM chick, and her job was to hire black people to code for Google. And they let her do this for like, I want to say like 2 years or so. And they fired her because she was hiring just black people, regardless of skill level. And so she was hiring all these black people that didn't even have like a basic understanding of even the most rudimentary coding. And of course, she flipped out and said, oh, Google's racist and all this other stuff. And I'm actually surprised Google had the balls to get rid of her, which makes you wonder, like, how horrible was it? Like, she must have been hiring some fucking ghetto-ass motherfuckers, right? For them to be like, all right, this is enough. But that's the way it is. That's the way it is. And look, if you don't believe me, just look at the government jobs. Well, in D.C., I've talked about this before. If you go to D.C. and you go to the Metro, everyone that works for the Metro is black. Everyone that works at the post office is black. Everyone with any kind of government job, really, in D.C. is, local government is black. And part of that, certainly in the beginning, was because of affirmative action, right? But once they get in there, once they get those management positions, who are they hiring? Not Whitey, not some cracker. So this is just natural. And just because you don't see color, just because you don't see race, there's only one race, the human race. That just makes you suicidal because everyone else sees race. Everyone else sees color. It's the way it is. Just the way it is. And there's no hate involved with that. Like the kids hanging from the burning building example I was saying, right? You're not saving your kid because you hate the other kid. You're not like hoping that kid dies. And in fact, after you save your kid, you'll probably try to save, or after you save your kid, you'll try to save the other kid, right? You still want to save kids, but yours comes first. Now, the problem is we live in a country now where the ruling class increasingly has no genetic connection to us at all. I mean, it was bad enough when we had European ruling class that saw us as cattle, right? They saw us as in some ways, honestly, a different species. There was an elitism that kind of created this problem, but now it's being compounded by the fact that they're not even genetically close to us. It's gotten so bad, even Ann Coulter is finally addressing the JQ. Ann Coulter is tweeting out that, like someone said something about, because they were complaining. It was some lefty that likes to complain about white people when what they're really complaining about is Jews, right? And some lefty said something about how, Biden's administration, it doesn't look like America. It doesn't look like America, implying that it was all white people, right? And Ann Coulter retweeted it and said, what? You mean America's not 76% Jewish? For those of you who don't know, it's 2% Jewish. But Biden's administration is 76% Jewish. So not only is there not a genetic closeness, but there's an actual proactive, in some cases, dislike, to put it mildly, for white Christians. Like I was saying before, do you like the idea that all the people that are in charge of these agencies that'll be overseeing any new legislation that has to do with quote unquote, extremists, none of these people are going to have anything in common with you. And in fact, in many cases are going to be people who walk in, start the job already disliking you. We're the infection. We're the infection. And the immune system's coming after us. Simple as that. Someone said culture is a MILF. I don't know. I actually thought she was maybe a tranny until I met her. I'm just kind of joking. I never thought she was... Look, I think she's... I don't know. I never thought she was attractive. I'll just put it that way. She's really tiny, by the way, in person. She's a lot more petite than I thought. Let's see here. Without... even Epstein was listed as white. Exactly. This app doesn't notify me when you're live. Yeah, people keep saying, oh, send out Trovo notifications. Send out Trovo. I don't see where you even do that. And I don't think it's boomer tech. It's like there's no... I've hit every button that is in this screen. And there's not one of them that says notification. And that's ridiculous, by the way, Trovo, that you don't just automatically send notifications when someone's live. And maybe there's like a setting somewhere, like 5 settings deep, where you can set it to automatically do it, but I haven't seen it. But on this screen, certainly, I've pushed everything. There's nothing that says notify followers. But yeah, I notify on Gab, Twitter, and Telegram. So that's the best I can do. Let's take a look here. Yeah, that's the funny thing. They listed Epstein as white, but Ghislaine Maxwell said her jury was too white for her to get a fair trial. It's so disgusting. It's so disgusting how they can be chameleons like that. Speaking of mass, I'm not gonna. Well, I guess it's okay. Look, I don't support what mass shootings at all. But if you read the Dylan Roof in his manifesto, I didn't read the whole thing, but I read one part because a friend of mine quoted it, and I was like, "Oh, who said that?" And he said, "Oh, Dylan Roof." I was like, "Oh, all right." But he said something about I don't remember the exact quote, but he said like if Jews were blue, like their skin was blue, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have because people would be able to just notice right away, oh, it's those blue people again. Hollywood is an example, right? How come every movie is just blue guys? Like everyone's blue or everyone on TV is blue. I don't get it. But no, they're chameleons. They blend right in and they can play both sides. They, when it's convenient, they're white people. When it's not convenient, they're Jewish. So, someone says, didn't he cap black politicians? No, I think he just shot up a black church, which is kind of retarded. But I don't know all the details of that. Someone had mentioned or referenced that, and I was like, oh, that's a good insight. And then they told me who said it. I was like, oh, all right. I mean, he has a point, if there was if only there was some kind of, mark that differentiated them, I don't know, maybe like a gold star or something like that, or just something that you would know. I mean, I guess Twitter kind of already has that. It's like a blue check mark. So it's kind of like, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, and that's also why a lot of people talk about how, China, people are worried about China, but China's one of the reasons they're in a better position. And yeah, they're going to do deals with Israel. And I mean, if you're a big financial, or big economy like China is, look, I mean, if you interface with the West, you're going to be going through Jewish bankers and Jewish merchants and stuff like that. That's just, I mean, look who runs these. Obviously, you're going to be doing business with Jews, but the the infiltration is not going to be the same, right? So like Biden's cabinet, right? It's a perfect example of this, right? Biden's cabinet is 76% Jewish. Average person, including white people, just see them as white. But if they were blue, you'd be like, wow, there's a lot of blue people that are in Biden's administration, you know? But that's not the case. And especially, often minorities, they really have a difficult time separating white people from Jews. In the same way that a lot of white people have a hard time differentiating, Koreans from Chinese or, whatever. They just see Asians. And they don't realize that there's a difference. I mean, white people aren't stupid. They know there's a difference, but it's not as obvious unless you're in that world. You can't spot the differences easily. In fact, even me, as I was younger, I don't think right away pick up on the physiognomy differences between white people and Jews right off the bat, especially because of how many Jews are in movies and stuff like that. It's very normal. In fact, it's extra normal because in real life, the population's like 2% Jewish, but if you're watching movies, it's 50% or whatever. I don't know if anyone's ever crunched the numbers on that, but there's certainly way more Jews in media and on your screens than there are in your day-to-day life, right? And so it just gets imprinted, and they play the parts of white people in these movies and stuff, right? Like they play Europeans, Christians, oftentimes, unless they look super Jewy, then you know what I mean. So that's just the way it is. But yeah, if there was something obviously different looking about Jews, we'd live in it. It would be a totally different situation. Let's take a look here. I was surprised with how many there were in movies. Yeah, even I was, honestly. I mean, you always kind of hear that, right? Oh, there's the whole joke. Jews don't run Hollywood. It's the gay Jews. Which is also somewhat true, but but you always hear the stereotype, right? But it's not until you start looking up at the early life of the people that produce every movie and and just the directors, and some of them are obvious, like Steven Spielberg and stuff like that. But again, because they're household names when you grow up, and especially in America, where there's not especially these days, there's not as many American names. Every name's just kind of it's like the fucking UN. So it's unless you are brought up to notice that difference, like the Berg and the Stein stuff, it just sounds like any other name, right? And it's not until you really start to actively notice that the meme every single time makes any sense to you. Honestly, that's what happened with me. Before I was quote unquote Jew-pilled or whatever, I was talking to some guy, and he kept bringing up, he kept saying every single time. And I was like, well, what do you, I don't even know what that means. What are you talking about? And he's like, well, they're always Jewish. I was like, no, they're not. What are you talking about? He's like, dude, just next time there's someone in the news that's like a total shitbag, like Schumer or Epstein or Weinstein or any of these guys, just look it up. Just look it up, and you'll be surprised. Especially if you know the math. If you know that that's 2% of the population, it'll start to be weird. And I was like, all right, I'll start doing that. I'll start looking. And that's what did it for me. I started looking, then I was just like, oh God. he was right. This is weird. There's definitely a problem here. Something's up. This is statistically impossible. So if you got a friend that struggles with this issue and doesn't, but they're intellectually honest, just do the same thing. Just say, hey, look, 2% of the population, just start looking it up. Start looking at early life. Just start doing it. You know, whether it's a reporter writing some really super subversive article, or someone like Mark Zuckerberg, or a director of a horrible movie, or prolific child rapist like Epstein. Just start looking, and then just do the math. Just do what's the probability of, or even just like in the case of Biden's administration. How is it that a group that makes up 2% of the population would make up 76% of presidential administration? That's the odds of that are astronomical, that it would just be that way. That's really weird. So anyone that's intellectually honest, once you start looking at that, it's kind of like the 13 does 50 thing. If you're intellectually honest, and you're just like, you're intellectually honest, but you're good natured, and maybe you just believe the propaganda, and you think to yourself like, well, no, like blacks get a bad rap, and like everyone's just because of all this racism and bigotry, people just they portray them as these ultra violent, in the words of Hillary Clinton, super predators, and it's just racism. And so you can believe that until you see the numbers. And then it's just like, well, that's just impossible that those numbers exist as some kind of statistical anomaly. And luckily, what we got going for us is white people, and increasingly Asians now, especially with the attacks that are going on against Asian people right now. In fact, I saw a headline the other day, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was some wokeist, probably early life champion, that was lamenting the situation where blacks are continue to victimize Asians, not just in New York, and just a lot of major cities right now. And it's becoming an epidemic. And they were lamenting not the fact that Asians were being victimized, but they were saying, it's too bad we can't make this into an issue without hurting black people. Like, that's how they framed it. Again, I forget the exact wording of it, but they said something along the lines of, it's unfortunate that we can't make the violence against Asians an issue because it'll be at the expense of black people, and we can't do that. Because Asians are another competing group that, if left to their own devices, will outcompete these other groups. They just simply will. They do. That school in San Francisco, the whole reason, there's one school in San Francisco, and San Francisco has some of the worst schools in the country in terms of test scores, regardless of race, across the board. They just have horrible, horrible fucking schools with one outlier. And that's because this one outlier has an entrance exam that's very difficult. And because of that, that school in San Francisco is something like 70% Asian. Well, they can't have that, right? So they're getting rid of the entrance exam, and they're going to ruin that school too. Because Asians are going to and you see the same thing with the Harvard admissions. where they're getting sued right now by an Asian, I think, student union because the Harvard admissions is favoring Jews over Asians when the Asians are outperforming them. And the excuse that the Harvard admissions is using is that when they do the interview process, in other words, the nepotism interview, they fail that portion of it. So it's just outright discrimination against the Asians because the institutions are run by Jews and they want their, again, see, this racial stuff, it's a fact of life. And I don't know why so many white people are in denial of it, other than that they just have been gobbling up this propaganda that's been vomited on them since the civil rights movement. And they've become like these self-hating faggots. And it's suicidal. And the only good thing about it, I guess, in some ways, is I feel like the ones that are less white-centric, if you will, those are the ones that aren't procreating very often either. So maybe in a way, this is applying an evolutionary, unfortunately, we're living during like the rough part of that, right? Where a lot of whites are getting selected out, but maybe it's for the best in the long run, right? Because it's maybe selecting for the whites with in-group preference. But, who knows? Who knows how this will work out in the long run? But anyway, let's take a look here. High IQ Asians as allies. Well, they are, but they aren't though, because here the problem is. I mean, just if you look at the voting patterns of Asians, they vote leftist. That's just the way it is, high IQ or not. And I mean, look at China, right? China's high IQ, average IQ is higher than the average IQ in America, but they structure their society different because they're different people. And they structure their society in a way that sounds horrifying to a lot of white people. In fact, that's like the big thing, right? We don't want to be like China. We don't want to be like China. Now, in some ways, I would like to be like China. But in many other ways, I don't want to be like China. You'd be surprised at how much of your personality and your political beliefs are genetic. People don't want to believe that because they want to believe that they're all like these unique snowflakes and that all of that everything is just like every idea they've ever had is just originated magically from within their mind. That it doesn't have like a source that, I'll tell you, the older you get, the more you see your parents in you. The more you realize like, oh God, I'm starting to turn into my dad. People say that, right? People always say that because it's true. A lot of your personality, a lot of your just even personal tastes are genetic. It's just the way it is. No big deal. But that said, yeah, I mean, obviously, Asians pose less of a threat to your safety, certainly, than other groups. But yeah, I mean, it's maddening to me because it seems like white countries are the only ones that are, for whatever reason, are obligated to take in anyone and everyone. This isn't happening in Asian countries. It will. I mean, maybe not in China, but like already Korea and Japan are being, they're trying to shame them into taking in refugees and they're pushing the diversity, especially because their birth rates, right? So in Korea, in fact, last year in South Korea, I think it was the first year their population went down because their birth rates have fucking plummeted. And a lot of that's because this culture of, it's kind of like some of the worst parts of Western feminism mixed in with the Eastern culture, where you have a lot of these overeducated, female Korean women, Korean women, and part of their culture is you have to marry up, right? Like you don't want to be this. Like you have a little bit of this in Western culture as well, but in Eastern culture, it's even more hardcore, where you don't want to be making more than your husband, right? You don't want to be more educated than your husband, right? Well, as men are increasingly disenfranchised from education and even from the business world in favor of these women, it's becoming really difficult for these women to find men that live up to this standard. You see some of this in the West too, but like in the East, it's like really becoming a problem. In fact, a lot of these Korean men, they're just finding Chinese peasant women to marry, and just to not have to deal with it. So you have these super educated, very professional, childless Korean women. And last year their population went down in a large part because of this phenomenon. And it's only a matter of time before the capitalists, because, South Korea is a capitalist country. Very capitalist. You got Samsung, Kia, a bunch of other companies there, big companies. And they're going to use the exact same logic that they've used in Europe and in America, because the capitalist, capital comes first, not the people. And capitalism has to always be growing. Always be growing. And so the capitalists in Korea, and it doesn't matter that, yes, Asians have higher in-group preference. Asians are naturally more, lack of a better term, they're naturally more racist, right? And that might preserve their culture a little better than what has gone on in the West. But ultimately, if the capitalists are the ones calling the shots, they're going to see a need to replace these missing people. They can't have the population contract if the economy has to always be growing. So they'll do exactly what these Western countries have done. And I don't know if they have the same kind of, I would imagine they do. I don't know to what degree. I don't know if they have the same kind of social obligations, because that's another thing they'll say, like, oh, well, if the population contracts, we're not going to have the taxpayers available to pay for all the old Korean ladies that never get married and never have children. And we have social services that pay for these old women. So we need to bring in all these immigrants that can become taxpayers and help fund that. So they'll use all the same stuff. And they're already doing that in Japan, and they're on some level they're doing that in Korea. But China's not going to suffer from that problem because their population is way higher. Their landmass is insanely big. In fact, if anything, China is kind of expanding into Africa. They're building these settlements. I mean, they're basically colonizing parts of Africa right now. So I think, honestly, we're at a point in history where China is going to be. I think we're going to be in a Chinese era. Probably in our lifetimes, we're going to see China as the world power, because it's only a matter of time for our economy. I mean, fuck, this year, not counting not counting the stimulus check stuff, that we're going to be, our deficit, our budget deficit, not just what we're spending, the budget deficit is larger than the GDP for this year. I mean, that's insane. And that's ignoring all the other fucking debt and the interest we have to pay on that debt. I mean, this economy is, I mean, something's going to happen. I don't know what. Something's going to happen, though. And it's not going to be, even if it's something that keeps the economy going, it's not going to be good for you and I. Let's take a look here. These are cold takes from 2017. Yeah, all right. Well, guess what? Boom. You're gone, faggot. Was that a cold take? I told you it was a cozy stream. A lot of people know what I'm talking about. I'm not saying this is anything groundbreaking. But now you're banned, so suck a dick. Let's take a look here. What do you think about pirate radio, analog television as a means of local communications? It's cheap to get into. When doing low power stuff, it seems easy way to connect with like-minded neighbors. I don't know. I don't think that there's a lot of people listening to the radio these days. It's more of that's a fun hobby. It's fun to think that that'd be like a cool thing to do, go back into be like a Bill Cooper kind of a thing. I just don't think maybe, I don't know. Why not try it? The investment's pretty low, right? So you can try it. Try it. See if it works. If it works, let us know. I don't think you're going to, how many people are listening to the radio these days? Even when you're in the car, most people they're not even listening to the radio anymore. In fact, I'd be surprised if in the same way that broadcast television is, it's not gone, but they changed it to the digital format and sold off the bands they were using before to Google, I think. I'd be surprised if something similar doesn't happen to radio. In fact, that was what was going to happen to AM radio until talk radio happened. But now that there's streaming and stuff, who's listening to talk radio? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's a fun hobby, and there's emergency uses for it. I don't think we're going to get back to an age of analog radio. It'd be as fun as that would be. Let's see here. Some people listen to Sirius XM radio, but that's about it. I don't know many who listen to AM or FM. Yeah, most people don't. In fact, even like I was, because I'm into radio, and I thought, it'd be cool. While I'm working on the roof, I'll hook up my radio and I'll see what kind of reception I can get way out here. And I have like a pretty big ass antenna, so I was like, I'll hook it up to that, and I'll be able to pull in all kinds of stations. And it was weird because I'm wondering who's paying for the advertising, because if I listened to FM radio, first of all, there was like a shocking lack of commercials. And then the commercials that they did play, because this was kind of recently, it was like all public service announcements about COVID stuff. It was all like masked propaganda. And then AM radio, I guess it's kind of like, it's basically just the AM radio hasn't really changed much in the last, 30 years. It's just mostly local talk show stuff. And then you have the syndicated people, but that's going away. That's slowly going away. That's when the boomers are gone, that's going to be gone. I used to listen to talk radio on AM all the time. But not anymore. Even in fact, I stopped listening to the radio. The people that I would listen to on the radio starting like 10 years ago, I just switched over to getting their podcasts. I wasn't even, because then you don't have to listen to the commercials and all that stuff. So the only people left that are still listening to radio are boomers. And even boomers are listening to podcasts and stuff like that nowadays. So, I mean, as fun as that would be, because you're right, the barrier to entry is really low. You could make like a little, and I've got the equipment to do that, and it'd be fun to play around with that. But in terms of being really effective, not really. An emergency situation, awesome. It's great to have that stuff. But yeah. Let's take a look here. What do I think of the Boogaloo Boys? I don't know much about them except for every time I've seen them recently, I've seen a few interviews from them, and they seem like they're partnered up with Black Lives Matter. Like they're just anarchists. That's it. As far as I can tell. So, I no thank you. Let's take a look here. What do you think about Ruben Viru? I don't know. I can't say that name. And the allegations against him, former Trump guy, and Trump using Epstein lawyers yet again. Oh, well, his name's Ruben, so I'm guessing he's a Jewish lawyer. Yeah. No, Trump's using Epstein lawyers because he's part of that crowd. I'm sorry. I've talked about this ad nauseum. Trump is part of that crowd. Epstein was part of his social circle. No, and really no one, unless they're just outright lying or completely ignorant, no one disputes that. They lived real close to each other. They know all the same people. A lot of my family's getting red-pilled, including on the JQ, independent of each other. Some things are genetic, pattern recognition. Right. Yeah, there you go. Trump appointed Alex Acosta. That says it all. Exactly. And for those of you who don't know, Alex Acosta is the guy who gave Epstein the sweetheart deal the first time he got busted. He was the Florida prosecutor that let Epstein off the hook. And then inexplicably, or unless you know what I've been saying is true, it's not that inexplicable, Trump appointed him as labor secretary, I think it was. Why would you do that? Why would you appoint a Florida prosecutor who gave Epstein his sweetheart deal as labor secretary? Sorry, guys. Trump's one of them. Yeah, Trump pardoned Israeli spies and drug-dealing rappers, but not his own supporters. Yeah. I mean, I think we all know here. And if you don't, just I don't know what else to tell you at this point. If you're still hopeful for MAGA 2024, you're screwed. You're just going to get grifted on. Trump likely just accelerated things. He fixed nothing. I don't even think he accelerated things. He kind of slowed it down because he channeled all that anger that got him elected into stupid shit like QAnon. Yeah. So Trump lubed up the dildo of destruction. I guess that's one way of putting it. You should research that name. No one talking about it really. What, the Rubin guy? I mean, I read an article. I don't know if it was the same guy, but I read an article about how all of Trump's lawyers were Jewish Epstein lawyers. Yet again. Devin Blonde, in the belly of the beast, wants to interview you. You should do it. She's pretty based. Yeah, I mean, the bandwidth problem is the only thing. She'd have to interview me like late at night until I get that fixed. Do you have at least A worst option for 2024? A worst option? I don't know what you mean. Has Trump even ever said the word QAnon? No, but he's been asked about it and totally let it keep going. He had several opportunities, or at least two, during press conferences where he was asked point blank about it. And come on, he's not a retard. He knows about it. And he had two very public opportunities to say, this is crazy. This is stupid. And it's not real. And both times he danced around it because he knew that those people supported him. And for all we know, he's in on the fucking gag and chose not. He did like the most political answer ever, where he was just like, well, I don't know. They don't. I mean, they sound like, they're people that just like me and they want to vote for me, and that sounds good. Like, he wouldn't condemn the crazy shit they were saying because he didn't want to piss off. Like, he saw it as like a part of his supporters. He's a politician. That's the funny thing, is everyone's like, oh, we elected him because he's not a politician. Well, he learns fast, apparently. All right, someone said Sarah Sanders was asked twice. Trump was asked 4 times. Yep. I didn't know it was asked 4 times. I remember her getting asked a few times, though. Actually very curious what your thoughts are on Enoch and the National Justice Party, if you have any. Yeah, Mike, he seems pretty cool. I'm not like they're behind a paywall, and I'm not like, I don't pay for that. So all I've seen is when he's been on other people's streams, and he seems all right. Seems like a smart guy. I've watched a few of their speeches for the National Justice Party, but again, it doesn't look. I support them trying that out. It's just I don't think it's a viable option at this point. I have not watched the mold bug video. What are your thoughts on Stefan Molyneux giving up on politics? I don't know. He cucked out. I think that he realized that that's what took his money away. So he's trying to focus on things that are more monetizable. I mean, I don't know. The weird thing is the guy's got money. Certainly, unless he cashed all his Bitcoin in, he's got money. Plus his wife he's got money. So it's weird to me because I feel like he's not sacrificing as much as like, say, a lot of us, like me and other people like me, where we don't have a lot of money, and we do this knowing that we're not going to get a lot of money, and that's okay because we believe in it. And he's got a kid, so you'd think that he'd have more to worry about. And yeah, I don't know. But I kind of feel like it's probably a money thing, if I had to guess. But I don't know. Yeah, so he's not. I mean, I haven't watched. I honestly have not watched a Molyneux video in like maybe like a year. Let's see here. If the NJP isn't viable, do you think American Party is the next best? I don't think any parties. It's not that. Look, I'm not talking shit about their party specifically. I'm saying that there's no political solutions are not looking viable. Is what isn't looking viable. It's not their particular political solution. It's political solutions. I don't think that's where this road goes. And I'm not the only one that thinks that, because the Biden administration just yesterday said, remember when I asked on Twitter, is the troops are still in D.C. The troops that were supposedly there to protect people from the insurrectionists during the inauguration, and then they were going to go home, and then they were like, oh no, now we're going to keep them because they need to protect us from the insurrectionists during the impeachment trial. Well, now they're staying for throughout 2021. At least that's the word on the street. The Biden administration told some reporter that the troops in D.C. are going to remain there for the remainder of 2021. So I'm not the only one that suspects civil unrest is a rather certain thing in our future. Like I suspect they see exactly what I see coming. In fact, they probably see it in a lot more clarity because they have the surveillance state. So yeah, it's nothing to do with their party. It's just I just don't see that. I don't think that's where we're headed. Standing armies in DC. That's not concerning at all. Exactly. I mean, like I said, think of it this way. There are more troops in DC than in Afghanistan. Unless that changed. I think the troop numbers are still more in DC than in Afghanistan. And so that tells you a lot about the state, the health of our democracy right now. We need to win here so we can go save the UK and Europe. Yeah, good luck with that. You guys are on your own in the UK and Europe. I've seen so many liberals regret voting for Biden. Well, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I don't think he got there because liberals voted for him. Why can't you properly monetize what you do? Because I get demonetized. And so I write a book, and then they ban the book. And so I'm writing another book, and the first ones, at least, you can still kind of get it, but they'll probably ban it again. This is just this is the game they play, and eventually I'll have to do everything. You'll have to get my books with crypto through my own website, or who knows where this is going to end up, right? But this is just the beginning. So I'm living like a hermit, a poor hermit on purpose, because I'm bracing myself for what is coming. And that's just going to be the case for a lot of people like me. It's all right. What is the best way to donate? Well, you can send crypto to one of the addresses below any of the videos on BitChute. I have the addresses listed there. That's probably the best way. There's also Patreon and Subscribestar. What is the best way to send crypto? Just all the addresses are on all the videos on BitChute. Because you're scared of the fight? Like, who are you talking about? This is the fight. See, here's what you don't understand. One of the things that's really, you can always tell anytime someone says, oh, easy for you to say, living out there in the desert. Anytime I criticize people for saying, you shouldn't be using Amazon, you should cancel your Netflix. Oh, yeah. It's like all I'm picturing is like some fat fuck with like, gobs of soybean oil like dribbling down their fucking chin and just staining their shirt as they sit in the parking lot of a fucking Jack in a Box, shoving curly fries into their fat fucking mouth, watching Netflix episodes on their fucking iPad that's got all these grease stains all over the screen, you know, as they're like, yeah, it's real easy for you to fucking, when you, because they're so fucking plugged in, they feel ashamed and they lash out. They don't understand. The reason I live like this out here is so I don't have to worry about being if they deplatform me or whatever, it doesn't hurt me. I can say what the fuck I want to say, and it doesn't fucking matter. All right? And so, yeah, that's part of the fight right now. Right now, the fight isn't, what do you want me to do? You know, what do you want me to do? You want me to do something that's going to put me in jail? That'd be real fucking helpful, right? So right now at least, right now the fight is in the realm of information warfare. That's where it's at right now. And yes, it is real easy for me to say from out here. That's why I'm out here. And that's why I'm not sitting at your desk job where you're afraid that you'd like share a meme. Oh God, I hope they didn't see that I was on 4chan on my phone. Yeah, I'll get fired. Soybean oil, so delicious. You know, fuck you, dude. Like all you fat fucks just sitting there like, oh my God, I just like, I seriously want to beat the shit out of you when you guys say that stuff. Like, yes, this is part of the war right now. Part of my sacrifice is living like a poor person in the middle of fucking nowhere. That's where we're at right now. That's where we're at right now. And it's a lot more than what you're doing in that fucking Jack-in-the-Box parking lot in your fucking hybrid car that you've got a 5-year fucking loan on. I mean, that's what I'm trying. This is what I'm trying to tell people to do. That's what you should be doing. You should be preparing for to harden yourself, harden your life against financial attacks, against employment attacks, you know, against safety from mobs of feral fucking groups burning your neighborhoods down. And yeah, getting yourself in shape. Not spending all your paycheck on fucking companies that hate you and want you dead. That's where the war is at right now, okay? When it escalates, I'll be ready for it. You'll have your back against the fucking wall. That's where you'll be. I'm trying to tell you guys, look, I'm not saying this is not a call to arms. Nothing I've said has been like, oh guys, let's get our AR-15s and fucking drive down to the Capitol. No, I'm saying get your fucking shit together. Get your life together. Yeah, and it will be easy for you to say. You won't have to worry about having opinions or getting doxxed or getting deplatformed if you're living like a poor person. It just sucks. That's the sacrifice you have to make right now. I mean, there's maybe people that have other situations where they can, you know, if you own your own company, you know, maybe you're lucky. Maybe you've got some money and you can use it to help the cause or whatever. But my guess is you're just in crazy amounts of fucking debt and you're just stuffing your face with fucking empty calories while watching Mind Poison and getting mad when I shame you about it. So, there you go. Living poor isn't so bad anymore anyway. Yeah, it's like pretty much impossible. It's pretty much impossible to starve to death or anything like that these days. It's just people want to be the alpha slave. They talk a big game. But they won't talk it at work. They're afraid of getting sent to HR. Oh, I'll lose my job if I say anything like that. If I stand up for what I believe in, I'll lose my job. Okay, then you shouldn't be working there. Why are you working there? You like it? You like being a house nigger? Is that what it is? Yes, massa, sir. Yes, massa, sir. I'll go push the buttons for you. I'll pull the levers for you, sir. You're a fucking house nigger. That's what you are. Yeah, you get to live in the big house, don't you? Being the alpha slave is just not, that's not my thing. It's not my thing. All right. Don't let these trolls get... No, they don't get to you. I just, like, there's people that genuinely, they don't get it. They don't see that they're fucking house niggers. They don't understand that, like... I mean, they really don't, they don't get it. They still don't see, because they want the fancy alpha slave trinkets. They would rather... It's like the people that when I would tell, and I've talked about this before, when I tell them, hey, cancel Netflix. Well, I will as soon as I say cancel Netflix because they're supporting literal pedophilia. Well, I will as soon as I'm done watching this show. I mean, there's people like that. Like, their brain is so rotted. They're like, well, I have to keep supporting pedophilia so I can finish watching this show. That's what we're working with here. Now, fortunately, those are the people that are going to be selected out of the gene pool. But hopefully, maybe some of them, through ridicule and shame, will realize what the fuck they're doing and will change. But that's the only way you can get through to those people at this point. Yeah. I'll cancel as soon as I finish watching Cuties. It's like, these people are that retarded. All right, let's take a look here. It's hard to be a hermit when you have people to take care of. No, I'm not saying you have to be a hermit. Look, I'm using hyperbole when I say hermit. Like, okay? I'm not going to just live out here the rest of my days out in the desert by myself and with no contact with it. That's not the plan. Like, I joke around about that, but that's not the plan, okay? And maybe there's too many autistic people to get that. I would absolutely raise a family here. Way before I'd raise a family. When I worked at DC, making like 50 fucking times what I make right now, never would I want to raise a family there. Never in a million fucking years. I would totally raise a family here, poor as shit. See, this is what people need to understand. Do you want to be the alpha slave? You want to live in the big house? Is that what you want? Let your kids be raised as alpha slaves? By people that hate them? Because that's what's going to happen if you're chasing those fucking dollars. You're chasing those little fucking paper triangles. Because one day, you'll be in the ruling class. Yeah. Not going to happen, asshole. Because you're chasing that fucking carrot and because you're afraid of the stick. You're gonna let the state raise your kids. Because you're too busy chasing the money to fucking raise them yourself. And that's if you ever even have fucking kids. A lot of these assholes won't even have kids. I would never fucking raise a family in DC, making, like I said, making like 50 times what I'm making now. Never in a million fucking years. In fact, that's why a lot of these people won't have kids. It's not even that they can't or don't want to. It's just they think that in order to have, they've bought the alpha slave lie. That they think they have, well, I can't afford kids yet. I can't afford kids yet. I'm making $100,000 a year, but I still can't afford kids. You got your priorities all fucked up. And all I'm saying is you have to disconnect from that fucking usury system. And right now that means you have to be poor. Right now, that could change. If more of us do this, and we build communities where we use nepotism, among other things, to strengthen our communities. But right now, because of where we are in history, yeah, disconnecting from it, you're going to feel a little pain. You think I like being poor? I don't like it. I'm a simple guy, so it's not that big of a deal, but there's times where I'm like, fuck, I wish I had an extra couple grand to fix this or whatever, right? Or I wish I could pay someone to fix this instead of me having to fix, or whatever, right? But that's not where we are right now. I could live in the big house if I wanted to live in the big house. I've lived in the big house. I know it's nice in the big house. But it's never going to be your house. It's always going to belong to someone else. You're always going to be a slave in the big house. Don't you need a high-paying job to max your SMV? What's SMV? Is that something I should know? Did I pull down your ham radio antenna to put a gimbal on? No, I don't have like a tower. I wish I had a tower. We can learn from the Amish, the ultra-Orthodox Jews on how to form communities with fertility rates of 9 kids per woman. Yeah, I mean, you know, that's one way to put it, I guess. But, you know, you have to, that's the thing is the funny thing is a lot of people fear leaving the city and living simply because they'll be poor. And what they don't realize is you're the one fucking taking on the chin. You're the one biting the bullet. You're taking one for the team because you're only poor that initial move. And the only way you stay poor is if you just have like no ambition and you're terrible at everything. Okay? There's so many ways to not be poor living out of the cities. But you're right. You might not be able to have your easy, cushy job where you go out and have happy hour and tip the waitress $50 because she had a nice ass or whatever, and drive your fucking car that you're heavily in debt. It doesn't even belong to you. It belongs to a fucking bank. Back to your fucking house that also belongs to the bank. And that's if you're lucky. Most of you drive into an apartment that belongs to some Jewish guy that you're paying rent to. You know what I mean? Like, if that's the game, if you want to be a slave, go right ahead. And you can have children that are raised as slaves. Go right ahead. Hasn't exactly been working out for our people the last 100 years, but go ahead. You know, go home and watch Tucker Carlson and complain about the left. Oh, the fucking left. Maybe if we elect DeSantis, you know, he told Biden to fuck off, so he's probably, that's based. Then you'll just keep getting more of the same and keep complaining, and your kids will do the same shit. Because like we said, you know, a lot of behavior is heritable, so they're just gonna grow up to be alpha slaves just like you. Or you can do what presumably one of your ancestors did, and you can disconnect from that society, that failing society, and try to make something for yourself outside of that failing society. Because didn't all of us have at least one ancestor that did that? Isn't that why a lot of us, or at least for the, you know, in terms of the Americans out there, isn't that why our family ended up in America? Because we were tired of being the alpha slave? Decided to go be poor somewhere else for a while? And try to make it on our own? That's all I'm saying that you should do. That's all I'm saying you should do. Everyone has been the guy Devin is describing. Look, I was trying to be the alpha slave. That's why I understand it. I was doing the same stupid shit. I was just talking about that. Like, I would make more money, and what would I do? I would spend more money, and I would be just as poor as I was when I was making 10 grand less. Because I was trying to be the fancy alpha slave that was impressing all of my friends on social media with pictures of how fancy my parties were and how expensive my clothes were. And, oh, look at this really cool bar we went to. Or, I'm going to take a picture of this food that's really neato. Actually, I've never been a take a picture of my food fag. I've never been that guy. But that guy, everyone knows that guy. I get it. I was making good money. And I was blowing it all on trying to be fancy man. It gets you nowhere. It gets you fucking nowhere. People choose comfort over doing the right thing. Exactly. We have a decadent society. It's funny because all these people that complain about all the side effects of decadence can't fathom that they're participating in the very system that's creating all these problems. Well, I don't want to do that. That would make things slightly uncomfortable. I'm more comfortable having Netflix than not having Netflix. I'm more comfortable with same-day shipping than not same-day shipping. I'm more comfortable spending all my money, my hard-earned money, at all these mega corporations that want me dead. It's like, all right. Well, then the system was designed exactly for people like you, and you shouldn't bitch about it. Because you're playing along. Someone says, can't opt out of that. Opt out of what? Oh, taxes. Well, yeah. I mean, there's only so much you can do, right? Slavery is a choice. Most people choose to be slaves because being a slave is easy. Being free is hard. Yeah, exactly. Have you ever had any luck finding a good pioneer woman? The search continues. No, it's like, here's the thing. That's another part of it, right? People will say, well, if I go out there, how can I find a woman? Well, look, when you're in the city, what women are you finding out there? From a guy who lived in the city and was, depending on how you look at it, I guess, in some ways very successful at dating, but also like unbelievably unsuccessful. You know what I mean? Yeah, you're not a lot of women are going to be down for doing the homestead life. And look, I'm not saying everyone has to do the homestead life. I'm just saying, don't be an alpha slave. Don't live in the tiny fucking studio apartment that costs $4,000 a month because you get to feel fancy. Stop trying to live beyond your means. Stop prioritizing comfort. Now, women prioritize comfort probably to a larger degree than men do. And yes, it's not as easy finding someone that wants to live on, like, there's women that they talk a big game and they want it, homesteading, that's fun because, there's Instagram pages that make it look cute. And then they do it and they're like, ooh, there's bugs and it's cold in the winter. it is what it is. But it's not impossible. It's not impossible. If you are, especially, I mean, look, because ultimately, women really what they want is safety, right? They want safety and security. And so, yeah, they might not be super excited to help you carve something out of the land. You might be running solo when you're doing that shit. But the whole point of like what I'm doing, for example, is for safety and security in the first place, right? And there's women that are attracted to that. Don't let that get in the way. And look, there's a lot of women that are down to do this kind of stuff. And here's the thing, and I've said this before: not a lot of women are down to do this kind of thing, but the women that are, those are the women you want anyway. Like you're not. It's very unlikely that you'll find a woman that wants to go out and do the homestead life, and then she turns out to be like a complete degenerate, or neurotic person. Usually not. Usually the women that are okay with doing the homestead life are going to be pretty cool chicks. So it's a good filter, I guess. I don't know. Someone says, if women seek the easy way out, like Jews, I don't know if that's, I don't know, but does this mean alpha slaves get first pick? Well, they get first pick of women that are driven mostly by materialism. And that's what I'm saying. That's my point. You don't want the women that are chasing the alpha slaves. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of women. Look, there's a lot of men that want to be alpha slaves, and there's a lot of women that want to be with alpha slaves. Nothing you can change about that. But if you create a secure, safe environment at your, like in my example, like it's so, the reason why this is like a weird topic for me is every situation is totally different. And so I'm trying to speak in these generalizations, but it doesn't really work. So let me just talk about my situation specifically. All right. What I'm doing out here, my first year out here, when there's like a killer beehive in the roof, there's rats everywhere, there's a hole in the roof, so like it rains inside the bunker, like that kind of shit, most women are not going to be okay with that. Maybe you'll find like a really, like a pioneer chick or something that's down with that. Most women are not going to be okay with that. Understandable. Not ideal, but whatever. The universe is not ideal. But once you have all that squared away, like, because you're not going out to do a homestead because you want to be a homeless person. Like, I'm not saying go out and be a homeless person. The whole point of the homestead is you're going to provide yourself and hopefully your family with safety and security, right? And so once you've created that safe and secure environment, that's exactly what women want. Now, meeting them is maybe a little bit harder, but it's not impossible. Especially with the internet, it's not impossible. Someone just said most people are not okay with that. No, I mean, that's part of homesteading, man. Like, there's animals, there's snakes out here, there's fucking, there's rats, there's squirrels, there's just animals. That's the way humans have lived for thousands of years. It's not a big deal. In my case, it was kind of a big deal because the place was abandoned for a while. So, like, the first year I was out here, it was like a lot of I had to domesticate the house. Like I like I had to make this place habitable. It was, I'm not gonna lie, it was uncomfortable sleeping in this building the first few months because there were snakes and shit in here. Now it's a very civilized place. It's still like a piece of crap compared to like most places I've lived. If you're just going based on luxuries. But it's totally fine. It's totally fine. Even the pioneers would build villages and towns. Well, I mean, to some extent. I'm not in the middle of nowhere. I'm in proximity to a community. 99% of human history is homesteading. Well, I'd say you're partially right. Are there roaches where I'm at? Not anymore. I mean, I had like every bug in the world inside this place the first year I was here. It was bug-tastic. But, I mean, you just got to take care of it. Have you ever read Walden or Life in the Woods? Or The Thing? No. Yeah, don't hate on linoleum floors. Well, I can't. I've got a lot of linoleum floors right now. Your content has changed my outlook on a lot of things since I started following you a couple years ago. Well, hopefully in a good way. We need villages. Yeah, and look, there's people I know that are essentially building villages with their homestead. They're homesteading out in areas where they have a lot of friends near them. And there's a lot of people congregating in different parts of the country. Like, Idaho keeps getting mentioned. A lot of people are congregating in Idaho. I came to this area because I like the desert. I know a lot of people think that's weird, but I like the desert. And price had something to do with it too. Thoughts on Alaska? Yeah, I mean, everyone has their thing. Alaska could be great too. I don't know if I would like the, just like a lot of people couldn't handle the heat of the desert. I don't know if I would handle the freezing cold for that long. Or depends on, I guess, where you are in Alaska. The whole, like, it's dark for 6 months shit. Like, that would probably get me down. Any suggestion for wood roaches that live outside that does not involve burning every goddamn tree for a mile? The bastards find a way in and are attracted to light. I don't know what those are. I don't have those in my area. One thing that made a huge difference, this just is like an easy thing. If you're out homesteading, you got lots of bugs, put up, like, especially like you're saying, they're attracted to light. Put up blackout curtains for your windows, and use the amber bug lights for outdoor lights. Just making that one change made a huge difference. The first year that I was out here, part of it was abandoned or whatever, but I had just these bright ass fucking lights for outdoor lights. And I would walk outside into a cloud of fucking bugs sometimes. Plus, we just had like a weird, like very buggy year the first year I was out. I don't know if it's because it rained a lot or what, but and then I changed to the amber lights outside. Huge difference. But same thing. I would have fucking all kinds of weird bugs hit my windows. Put up blackout curtains, which is good for the summer heat anyway when the sun's up. And dramatically cut down on just the bugs that I had out. And you can spray for bugs. There's different... I'd research whatever, maybe you got to spray those trees. Maybe you don't have to cut them down, but you have to go around and spray them. Let's see here. Best thing about the desert or the cacti? I wouldn't say it's the best thing, but certainly one of the things I like about it. I grow a lot of cactus. What are your thoughts on what is happening to whites in South Africa? Well, I mean, I'm not intimately, like I'm not up to date 100% with what's going on with that. But I feel as if the same thing goes. I mean, look, they're just kind of further down the road than we are. And I think the answer is the same answer that I'm telling you guys, is that if I lived in South Africa, I would either leave South Africa, or I would, if I felt wedded to the land in the same way that I kind of feel wedded to the land here, I would try to start a community. And there's that one white small town in South Africa. And so maybe, I don't know what the culture is like out there. I don't know how, maybe it's totally like way harder to homestead out there than it is here. I doubt it. But I would do that. Because here's the thing. One of the reasons why, people complain, oh, well, homesteading, it's less comfortable. Guess what? Guess who else is attracted to comfort? Parasites. The parasites that the alpha slaves are paying for want to be in close proximity to all the same things the alpha slaves do. And they want close proximity to the alpha slaves themselves. So one of the reasons why you come out in the middle of nowhere where it's not so comfortable and it's not so easy is the parasites don't want to go out there because they'd have to actually work. And so the fact that it's a little bit harder and it's a little less comfortable, that's part of what's making it better. Yeah, someone just saying South Africa and U.S. are totally different. Oops, it went too fast. Oh, what the hell? God damn it. Now I don't even know. Now it's streaming someone else's fucking stream. I fucking hate this app. Here we go. Well, now I'm never going to see there we go. South Africa and U.S. are completely different. In the U.S., it's all minorities that have formed a coalition against us, but still control most of the land, resources, and guns. Not for long. That's shifting. That's shifting. Parasites, I think we know who that is. What is my opinion on based Zoomers? There's some based Zoomers. Look, when people are young, you lack wisdom. And that's just, that applies to every generation, not just Zoomers. So there's some Zoomers that lack wisdom, like with every generation. But there are some based Zoomers, but there's also a lot of naive Zoomers. That's fine. So Wyoming is the best choice since it is the lowest population, the nasty winters, high winds keep the parasites away. I've only spent a little bit of time in Wyoming. There's a tiny town called Gillette, Wyoming that I lived in. Kind of a weird story about that, but I lived in Gillette, Wyoming for a couple of months when I was a young runaway. Yes, you heard that correct. I ran away from home when I was 14 and lived with someone I met at a bus station in Gillette, Wyoming for about 2 months. But I don't imagine that was a long time ago. But it seemed all right. I don't know. I was 14, so it's hard to, that's my only, I don't think I've been there since then. Most people are literally retarded. It's Idiocracy and 1984 with a Brave New World cherry on top. Yep. I would love to live in Wyoming or Montana. Yeah, they both seemed all right. I also went to Montana on that when I ran away. I was also in, I think it was, no, it wasn't Montana. Where did I go? It was North Dakota is where I went. Are you going to community build like you mentioned before? Yes, I am, both IRL and on the internet. I am doing things that I have not talked about yet because they're not ready to be talked about. But I am doing things both for IRL community building and for internet community building in the background. So just be aware of that. It's but it's the kind of thing that I can't talk about till it's until there's something to talk about, really, you know. It's not like I'm trying to keep some big secret. It's just, you know, I'm just trying to, there's a process. There's a place called Gillette. Yeah, it's a tiny town. It's spelled Gillette like the razor. I mean, it was a tiny town then. Really weird town. Very white town. In fact, there was hillbillies driving around, even though I thought it was weird because it was Montana. But there was people driving around in big trucks with the Confederate flag hanging out the back, which I was like, isn't this the North? But, you know, it was what it was. Winters are real for dudes not raised in them. I don't know what you mean by that. You ran away. Oh, yeah. No, I ran away from home. Well, I've told this story before, but the short version is when I was 14, I lived in a very strict, religiously strict family. And I did degenerate boy things. Like, for example, I had porno magazines. And I had firecrackers that my parents didn't know about. And I had BB guns my parents didn't know about. And I just had stuff like that. It wasn't anything too crazy. And I was also smoking pot. And my parents raided my room when I was in school one day. And I came home and saw that my mom was going through my shit. And I realized, fuck, she's going to find my porn and my firecrackers and like my BB guns and possibly like a joint or something. I'm going to be grounded for the rest of my natural life. And you got to remember, I was 14. So like my logic and my inhibitions were very, well, they were 14 years old also. And so I decided that I had to get out of that house because I was going to be grounded for the rest of my life anyway. And so what's the worst thing that could happen? If I got caught, I'd just still be grounded. So I couldn't make it worse. And I also thought that I didn't understand how the world worked that well because I was 14. So I thought I could just like go be run away from home and start a new life somehow. Like I could just get a job. Like I was retarded. And so my plan was to go to Canada because I don't know why. I'd seen too many movies where fugitives leave the country. And so I thought that as a runaway, that in order to really do it right, I had to leave the country. And so I got really close. I was gone for like around 3 months and hitchhiked, took buses, and was arrested in Minot, North Dakota. I was gonna sneak. That's because the Canadian border is like 15 miles away from Minot, North Dakota. Here's the funny thing. When I went to buy one of the bus tickets, it blows my mind. Because I was 14, I went to the counter where they sold the bus tickets, and I literally said, "What's the closest to Canada that you guys have?" Like ticket wise. And the lady busts out a book and she's like looking around. She's like, well, I guess Minot, North Dakota is pretty close. I was like, okay, I'll want a one-way ticket to that. And that didn't set off any alarm bells. You know, that just that a 14-year-old boy is saying, and look, I was like over 6 feet tall when I was 14. So like maybe I looked a little bit older, but still I was 14. I couldn't look that old. And to ask like that, like in retrospect, I'm just like, holy shit, that had to have looked so insane that I'm just like, what's the closest to Canada? I'll take a one-way ticket to that. And like, nothing happened. Like no cops got called, like nothing. That was just like, oh, okay, sir, here you go. Like, man, you know, maybe it was a high trust society back then. I don't know, but that's like, I've thought about that. Just like, how insane is that they were just like, here you go, sir. And like, no, that's not suspicious at all. And, but yeah, so I was just like, anyway, that's why I was there. And I ran out of money. And again, I was 14. And I was like, I tried to get a job at a Burger King in Minot, North Dakota. And I had a BB gun with me, which almost got me shot by a cop. This cop like pulled over someone for speeding really close to where I was kind of hiding out. And he circled back and like put his spotlight on me. And he saw that, you know, what he thought was like a gun. He saw that I had it and arrested me. And that was the end of my crazy story. That was the end of the road. I was sent back home after that. Yeah, that was a weird time. Oh, and plot twist. I didn't get grounded at all. Apparently my parents were just like, well, shit, if he's just going to, apparently, you know, we have no control over this kid. So, they made me go to therapy, which was really funny because I kind of manipulated the therapist into like turning it all on my parents, which wasn't entirely manipulation, but it kind of was. And, so they got, my parents were just like, got super pissed off and didn't make me go see the guy anymore because he was lecturing them and not their son that ran away thousands of miles to Minot, North Dakota. But yeah, it was a crazy time. That would make a great movie. I had some crazy shit happen to me on that trip. Really weird things happen. And yeah, just living with strangers and stuff. It was weird. In fact, it's a good thing I was a tall kid, or I probably would have been like, there was one guy I think for sure was like wanting to fucking rape me. But yeah. Devin Bio movie that'll never be made would be really entertaining. Yeah, it would be a great movie. I thought about it, like maybe it'd be a good book. Maybe I'll write a book someday because it was just a weird. I mean, it would be such a great coming of age story, you know, because like, and it's true. The whole thing was true. Like so many fucking weird things happened on that trip. I got shot at in, where was that? That one might've been Wyoming. What is it? Not Cheyenne. There was at one point, here's a side story. I've been shot at a lot in my life. That's the funny, people don't believe that. I had this comment because I talked about that one time I got shot at in Albuquerque when we were driving out of that parking lot and that lowrider pulled out of the parking space and whatever. And I'm just like, these nerfy kids that just have no idea what's coming. Like I feel bad for them. But anyway, another time I got shot at was, and I want to say it was Cheyenne, Wyoming, but I don't think it was. It was because it was... No. I think it was Billings, Montana. Billings. I think that's a place. But anyway, there was... they had layovers, kind of like airplanes with these buses. But sometimes they're a lot longer. Like sometimes you're stuck in a town for like maybe even like a day until the next one that keeps going. Because when you buy a ticket like I did, that goes to, you know, the Canadian border, they give you just like this whole bunch of tickets that are kind of stuck together. And then each bus station you go to, they rip off like another one of the tickets. So your ticket just keeps getting smaller, I guess is the way to put it. And I was stuck in, I think it was Billings, Montana. I was stuck there for like a day. And so I'm just screwing around, walking. I have time. I don't know what I'm just 14 wandering around this fucking town. Excuse me. And I thought I was all badass because I'm in like this tiny hick town. And I'm from like, gangster fucking Albuquerque. I think I'm all hardcore. And this car drives by and they yell something. I don't even know what they yelled at me. Like get a car. Like, I don't know what it was. And so I flipped them off. I was just like, fuck you, thinking I was all hardcore. And this car instantly pulls into this parking lot and starts turning around. I was like, oh, that's not good. And so I start running off, and I was next to a train station or like a train yard. And I'm like running between these train cars, and they started shooting at me. And so I got fucking bullets whizzing over my head as I'm running and hiding in this fucking train yard. And I hid in that train yard for like hours, just like fucking terrified. And eventually I had to get to the bus station to get to the next place. And it'd been like hours. So I was like, all right, well, there's no way, they're still out there. And so I had to get back to the bus station. And I walk out, and I don't know if they were just like waiting or if they just happened to be driving by again, like right at that, but it was like, I walk out and they were boom right there. This fucking Oldsmobile pulls right up, screeches to a halt right in front of me. And the biggest fucking black dude I've ever seen in my goddamn life, or maybe not now, but like at the time, like, I was 14. So it just like, he looked enormous. In fact, he was so big, the seat that he was sitting in that car was like broken. Because his fat ass had like smashed the fucking car seat into the back. And I just remember him like laboring to get out of this fucking car, and like that whole side of the car like bouncing up because his weight got out of it. And it was him and these two skinny white guys. Like the driver was a skinny white guy, and the guy in the back seat that was basically getting crushed to death by this guy's broken fucking chair he just stayed in the back. And at the time, I had this, remember I was telling you when I got arrested, I had that BB gun. So I had this BB gun. I was 14. All right. So you got to give me, I was 14. I had this BB gun in like a holster under my shirt, right? In like a real gun holster, like under my shirt. And I was dressed kind of like a skater kid. So I had like big baggy clothes, so it wasn't like, it's not like anyone could really tell unless you were looking, which is why I had it. I was 14. And so the guy gets out of the car and he's like, "Whoa, you fucking flipped this off. You're going to fucking die." And I was like, I was terrified. I was just like, I didn't flip you off. I was just saying, "Hey, what's up, man?" And like, and when I would do that, when I did like the motion, I was like, "No, man, I wasn't flipping. I was just doing this. I was just like going, 'Hey, what's up?'" And when I was doing that, apparently what happened was my shirt lifted up and it kind of got caught like on the holster. And the driver, one of the skinny white guys, just starts saying, "Dude, get in the car. Dude, get in the car. Dude, get in the car." And, the black guy like, kept trying to like talk shit or whatever, but kept looking back at the skinny white kid. And eventually, for whatever reason, he listens to him and gets in the car, and they drive off. And I'm thinking to myself like, "Oh, thank God, that could have gone like really bad. I thought I was going to die." And I looked down and I realized my shirt was caught like on the, the gun holster. And if you didn't know better, it looked like I was fucking packing heat. Like it looked like I had it's hard to tell that it was a BB gun, because of the holster and shit. And so as ridiculous as it was as a 14-year-old to have a stupid BB gun in a holster like that, I think it saved my life. So anyway, that when I saw that, I was like, oh, holy shit, that worked out, I guess. And then I put my shirt back down, obviously over it. And I booked it over to the bus station, and that was that. That was my experience in that fucking town. So, yeah, it was a crazy fucking, I'm telling you, it would be a great movie. It'd be a great movie. But anyway. So that's my story. All right, guys. We did a really long stream. It's 3.5 hours, partially because I've been meandering because I've been up so long today. I'm just tired and mumbling, I guess. But I hope you guys had a good, or will have, I guess, a good Valentine's Day. Do not despair if you do not have a special someone to be with on this day. And also, if you do have someone to be with on this day, cherish this moment. See, I have nothing. I got nothing right now. My brain's fried right now. I've been up too long. I will play the secret message before I go. So stand by for the secret message. I got a little lazy on this secret message just because of I want to get into doing codes within codes within codes, and I haven't quite figured out what direction to take that in. Also going to bring in a different format, I think, that because SSTV is a little limited in what I can put out. So I might play with a different format next time. But in the meantime, here's your secret message.
Warning. If you are not authorized to receive this message, or if you are wearing headphones, you are advised to temporarily reduce the volume of this transmission. If this is a recording of a previous transmission, you may advance the timeline by approximately 1 minute.
You have been chosen to receive a secret Blackpilled transmission. Stand by for secret pillbox message transmission. Transmission will commence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Transmission begin. Transmission complete.
All right. So hopefully you guys got that message. I think you guys did. It's so fun. So many people. All right, I'm just going to spill the beans. Although I've told you guys this already. It's easy to receive that message. Just look for SSTV, slow scan television. SSTV. And you can figure it out. People asking for the cat photos. I might show a classified cat at some point. We'll see. Maybe he'll be part of the secret code. But yeah, this one's not so much part of phase 2. This was, like I said, I kind of phoned it in on this one. Yep. All right. People got it. All right. People got it. Cool. All right, guys. Well, sorry if I meandered a little bit and was a little whiny and bitchy at times. I'm just really tired. And I'm that weird kind of tired where I know I can't go to sleep. So even now, now that I wrap this up, it's not like I'm gonna go to bed. I'm just wired, which is why you got to hear a random runaway story also, because I feel like I'm gonna be up for a while. So all the same, I don't want this to be like 4 hours long. So in the meantime, hope you guys have a good Valentine's Day. For Blackpilled, I am, of course, Devrin. Yeah.
Violent gangster, mafiotic, negroidic, the Black Frank Gelada, a gangster judge, therefore unprosecutable. The blackish, menial, negroidic in appearance and demeanor, felon, vicious, parroting puppet, ex-district attorney Nassau County, can watch my Frankenstein eyesight television playback of this felonious, lowly, sodomistic display by the felon, sodomist Judge William Sullivan and his lowly felon slut wife during my trial in Nassau County.